We say fight back!
Hey, over at ThomHartmann.com, we've got some really cool stuff. A lot of people don't realize that we produce a daily newsletter, and Sue puts we call it Sue's Daily Stack on there, which is literally a link to every story that I've talked about in the show. So all the research is right there. It's free. We don't share or sell our subscriber list. It's there's just it's there. It's there for you. And it's over at ThomHartmann.com. You can sign up for the free newsletter. You also can get my big picture take of the day, which is exclusively over at our website at ThomHartmann.com, as well as links to our videos, the book reports we typically do every day, all this stuff and more. It's all there at ThomHartmann.com. So check it out and sign up for our newsletter. I think you'll really enjoy it and appreciate it and find a lot of value there. We put a lot of work into this stuff. And you'll find it all right there on our website at ThomHartmann.com. And be sure to check out the newsletter and sign up for it. It's great. Beto O'Rourke came out and said he's going to be running for president, or he is running for president. We now have a growing and extraordinary field of candidates. And unlike the Republican primaries, 4 years ago now, essentially, is when it all kicked off, we are lacking the hustlers and con men that the Republicans had. I mean, they literally had people on stage who, weren't seriously running for president. They were running to raise their profile. They were running to sell more books. They were running, the scam that the Republicans do. I mean, they're in it for the money. Donald Trump, in fact, was in it for the money. He didn't expect to become president. He didn't even really want to be the Republican nominee. He just wanted to build Trump Tower in Moscow and keep it going in Turkey and keep it going in Panama, Panama City, and just keep all his little scams running. And it didn't quite work out that way, tragically. But the cool thing is that now on the Democratic side, we've got a solid field, and it's growing. In all probability, Joe Biden's going to jump in this week or next too, and that's like good news. The bad news is that watching these announcements about Beto this morning on network TV and going back and forth between CNN and MSNBC, immediately the question that's being asked is he too liberal? It's like, really? This is what's so great about Free Speech TV. And it's why you need to call right now, 877-378-8669, and say, yeah, I want to give $20 a month for forever. Just sign me up. Because I want to be part of Free Speech TV and make it happen. Because here on Free Speech TV, you're going to hear honest, clear, articulate discussions. I mean, with like laying out the individual pieces of the plans. Like the ways Bones articulate, it's just saying, here it is, right? Here's what's going on. Without we need independent media. We really do. And the fact that you're watching right now is proof of that. So 2 things I'd ask of you. Number 1, won't cost you a penny. Seriously. Please make a commitment to yourself that over the course of this week and this weekend, the next 4 days, that you're going to reach out successfully to at least one person to introduce them to Free Speech TV. Now, you may have to talk to 4 or 5 people about Free Speech TV to get that one person to actually turn it on and watch for a few hours and then come back and have a conversation with you about it. But that would be an incredible thing. If even half of the people watching Free Speech TV did that, we would grow our audience by half again, right? And then these fund drives wouldn't need to be as long. And number 2, make a contribution and make it a recurring contribution. Because for every person who signs up to be a sustaining member, a member who's going to be giving every single month no matter what, that's one less person that we need to beg for money from during these fund drives, these kind of time-delimited fund drives. And eventually we can get to the point where they don't need to be as long and they don't need to be as frantic, and, you know, we've got a solid base of support. So those 2 things are, like, for today at the top of my list, because we only have 2 days left, today and tomorrow, for this fund drive. This is the last chance, right? Today and tomorrow, the last chance to exercise your opinion, as it were, to say, yes, I support Free Speech TV. I am calling 877-378-8669 right now. With a $20 gift, you get the Free Speech TV flag lapel pin or the Jesus Was a Socialist bumper sticker, your choice. With a $60 gift, you get the Free Speech TV set of 6 stickers. I don't want to try and say that fast 3 times. With a $72 gift, you get an autographed copy of my new book, The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment, which we're actually this afternoon starting to record the audiobook edition of, but you'll get the actual physical book edition of it, which will be available in May. With a $100 gift, you get the Free Speech TV t-shirt. With a $200 gift, you get the Free Speech TV hoodie. With a $360 gift, you get all of the above. With a $500 gift, you can attend our webinar on dealing with, this is not so much healing from, but dealing with trauma, stress, anxiety, things like that. And with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland and hang out here for the last hour of the show, and I'll take you to lunch. But all of that is, you know, that's all great stuff. But the most important thing is do something, whether it's talking to friends and neighbors about Free Speech TV, or whether it's calling right now, 877-378-8669. But this is your tag, your it moment. We need your help. We really and truly do. 877-378-8669. We're still way behind our financial goals. So please call now and make whatever contribution you can.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And greetings, my friends, patriots, lovers of democracy, truth, and justice, believers in peace, freedom, and the American way. Thom Hartmann here with you. Beto O'Rourke threw his hat into the ring this morning, metaphorically, in Iowa, giving a, showing up in a diner and answering a few questions, and essentially what was a revisiting or I'd say kind of an initial creation of a really cool stump speech. And we will get to a conversation about Beto and, what you think about him and where we're going with that in just a few minutes. We've got also Professor Richard Wolff will be with us in the second hour of the program. It's going to be an interesting day. And there's certainly a lot going on in the world. In our third hour, Richard Escrow is going to drop by. But to start out with, David Dorson is on the line with us. He is he's got a new book out. It's called Moses v. Trump. He's an author. He's a legal scholar. And perhaps most consequentially, he was the assistant chief counsel to the Watergate Committee, the assistant chief lawyer for the Watergate Committee. And David, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you very much. Delighted to be on.
Thanks for joining us. Just from one author to another here, give us a quick riff on Moses v. Trump. I'm curious about this book you wrote.
Well, it's something of a romp, but it's basically a courtroom drama in which Donald Trump is one of the defendants. He was sued for libel, and things, I will say, did not go great for him. I guess I'm not giving too much away when I say
sued by Moses?
in Moses v. Trump is Ira Moses, a New York lawyer who sues Trump and an evangelical magazine. And it's got great endorsements from former president of Harvard, John Dean, Detective Frank Serpico, and others.
Oh, that's great. Sounds fascinating. We're talking to David Dorsen. His new book is Moses v. Trump, but you were the assistant chief counsel for the Watergate Committee. Who was the chief counsel?
That was Sam Dash, who reported to Sam Ervin, the great chairman of that committee, whose role was fantastic.
I remember it well. You note that looking at this college scandal that broke yesterday of wealthy people basically in a tax-deductible way, no less. We're all subsidizing this, giving money to nonprofit groups that the vast majority of them are, quote, legitimate. This particular guy was not. He was bribing coaches and test proctors. But you've got that kind of a system, which has been going on for quite some time. In fact, it was a major growth industry. I remember back in the 80s for high school kids, the academies to prep them. And that's right. I think, probably if we're talking about supplemental education, a very, very credible and reasonable thing. But this goes way beyond that. And then you've also got the situation where George W. Bush never would have gotten into Yale if his father and grandfather hadn't gone to Yale and made substantial gifts to that college.
Well, it's what some of us call affirmative action for the rich.
Yeah, and the same thing, the same thing with the guy who's in the White House right now. He never would have gotten into the colleges he got in.
He might not have got into any college.
Yeah, exactly. And we don't know. I mean, he was going to college back in the 60s when literally there were ads in the local college newspaper for people who were willing to take tests on your behalf or write term papers for you. We had not yet cracked down on that in terms of state and federal laws. And I remember it very, very well. So, I'm suspicious of any of this. But, really, this is the modern corruption of this seems to be, of the same thing with Donald Trump having to pay $25 million because he was found guilty in court of fraud, of defrauding people with his Trump University. What is this? Compare the on-the-record known crimes and shady associations of Donald Trump right now with what we learned about Richard Nixon in the last days of Watergate. How do they compare?
Well, it's
you were there.
I'm sure books will turn out on this, but to me, Trump is much more serious. One of the main reasons is that Trump is destroying our economy. He is destroying our relationship with our allies. He is strengthening dictators and murderers around the world. And Nixon, for whatever his faults were, and they were serious, it was a confined scandal. Now, there were other aspects of the Nixon administration in which I was involved, including what was called the responsiveness program, which rewarded friends of Nixon. But it's mild and moderate compared to what Donald Trump is doing. This is just terrible.
Right. So it's more like Nixon was a garden variety corrupt crook, and Donald Trump is a mob boss. Is that hyperbolic? Or
I think that's I think it's accurate. On Nixon, they started calling it a third-rate burglary, which of course it wasn't. But there was a first-rate cover-up. It was a bribery of Howard Hunt and others, and try to intimidate people. But it was the kind of thing that just about any mob or any serious criminal would do, and wouldn't be special. But Trump is doing everything, just fixing everything, lying about everything. It's horrible what's going on now.
Yeah. Now with Richard Nixon, now that this was about 4 or 5 years ago when the LBJ Library finally released the tapes after 50 years, we were actually able to hear in real time Everett Dirksen and Lyndon Johnson about 3 weeks before the election of 1968, talking about how LBJ had successfully negotiated peace in Vietnam. And Richard Nixon's people, on behalf of Nixon, and apparently under his direct order, had reached out to South Vietnam and said, don't go along with these Paris peace talks. I'll give you a better deal and I'll make you all rich. And then, you know, Everett Dirksen reaches out to Nixon and has Nixon call LBJ, and Nixon, of course, denies it. Everett Dirksen knows it's happening and confirms it. This is all on tape. We now know that Richard Nixon committed treason to become president of the United States. And in all probability, the evidence of that, which he knew LBJ had, was what they were looking for in the Watergate break-in. So, you know, here we have Nixon trying to cover up treason. You've got now former President Bani Sadr of Iran, who was elected in August of 1980 on a platform of freeing the hostages, who now lives in the United States, and said to the Christian Science Monitor some years ago, and it's still available, you can still read it, that his government had been approached by the Nixon, or by the Reagan campaign, you know, by Bill Casey, who was later made CIA director. Specifically, he's saying, if you'll hold on to the hostages until Reagan wins the election, we'll sell you weapons. You know, this became Iran-Contra. All these guys get pardoned. None of these crimes are even, you know, front of mind in most people's minds. To what extent do you think that the Ford's pardon of Nixon, Clinton's unwillingness to, well, for that matter, George H.W. Bush's pardons of Ollie North and Caspar Weinberger and all these people at the express suggestion of Bill Barr, who is now our Attorney General. He was the Attorney General then in '92, which produced these screaming headlines on Christmas Day of '92, you know, cover up alleged in Watergate, and it shut down the Watergate thing. To what extent has that led to this sense of impunity in the White House that we're seeing right now with Trump?
Well, frankly, I don't think Trump has the historical background or knowledge to make the connection. I think that was comparatively mild compared to what's going on now, where Trump denounces the FBI, denounces the Justice Department, denounces the intelligence community. Then it was, you know, surgical, selective. I happen to have later agreed with Ford's pardon of Nixon, but at the time I was furious. The others, I think, were unjustified. But with Donald Trump, it's a way of life. It's not a selective operation to help a few friends. He is just announcing, in effect, that he will pardon anybody who, you know, holds the line. And as I said, he's denouncing and destroying institutions that are essential to democracy, and he's degrading democracy in a way that his predecessors never did.
So we're talking with David Dorson, who is the Assistant Chief Counsel for the Watergate Committee. In your opinion, is impeachment the best option, or is just totally trashing them at the polls, you know, a year and a half from now, the best way to go about this?
Well, I think impeachment is not a good option, at least not at present. I think the public wants the government to operate and to get things done, and I think the best plan for the Democrats is to continue investigating, but also to continue passing laws and resolutions so that the people will understand how badly the Trump administration has handled things. One thing that has not been made too much of, and should be, is that for 2 years Trump, the Republicans controlled both houses of Congress and the presidency and got nothing done.
Yeah.
And now Trump is berating the Democrats for not doing what his House of Representatives should have done and Senate should have done. And it's just appalling that the Democrats are starting to do things and Trump is trying to stop them.
Yeah. Yeah, amen. David Dorson, his new book, Moses v. Trump, the legal scholar and former Assistant Chief Counsel for the Watergate Committee. David, thank you for dropping by today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you very much.
Great. Fascinating talking with you and getting your insight on all these things. So, Beto jumps in. What are your thoughts on Beto? Give us a shout, 202-808-9925. We'll talk about him and his record right after this.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Where does Beto O'Rourke stand on the issues? What kind of chance does he have? Is he running for president or vice president? What's going on in your mind? And welcome back. So Beto O'Rourke this morning, I don't know if you saw the clip. It was carried live on CNN and MSNBC. I'm not sure if Stephanie cut away for it. It was fascinating. One of the fascinating things about it was that, Beto O'Rourke was asked if he supports Medicare for all, and he went off on a screed about how important it is that everybody have health care, that we have universal health care, but did not say, yes, I endorse Medicare for all. He was asked about the Green New Deal, and he went off on a riff about how terrible climate change is and how we already have climate change refugees and things like that, but didn't specifically endorse the Green New Deal. It's interesting to watch him try to kind of take this down the middle, on the one hand. On the other hand, maybe it's very smart. Maybe it's smart to say, okay, I'm going to be flexible on these things. We had this conversation yesterday with Congressman Mark Pocan, where he was sharing with us something that Nancy Pelosi had actually taught him or told him. And what Nancy had said is that values are more important than issues, that issues come out of values. And so if we clearly express our values, for example, health care should be a right. Every American should have the right, as a simple human right, every American should have full access to health care. That's a value. Now, how do we get there? Do we get there through Obamacare? Do we get there through Medicare for all? Do we get there through a multi-payer nonprofit system like Switzerland has? Do we get there through a multi-payer with government involved in public option program, sort of like Germany has? Do we get there through a state-owned and run system, essentially socialized medicine like the United Kingdom has? Do we get there through a single-payer system like France has? Do we get there the way Canada did, Medicare for all? There's a variety of ways to get there. And if, right now, the one that's really hot and that everybody's, saluting the flag on is Medicare for all, but if a candidate says, I'm not certain that's the best way to get there, that's one of the ways to get there, but we're going to get there, are we ready to actually take their word for it? Because we've been burned before. I mean, you go back to Bill Clinton's New Covenant speech in 1992, he was talking about these same things. Barack Obama, Hope and Change, he was talking about these things. Well, he actually did something about health care, something really huge and consequential, as a matter of fact. And had it not been for Joe Lieberman sabotaging the public option, frankly, I think, right now, here, 6-8 years later, most Americans would probably be on Medicare, and we'd be 3/4 of the way into Medicare for all because, hey, it's cheaper and it's better coverage. And I can tell you, having been on Medicare for 2.5 years, it is cheaper and better coverage. So, how should we be viewing? Through what lens should we be viewing Beto O'Rourke's candidacy? Because really, he's talking values, but he's being a little squishy on policy. So are we twice burned, once shy, or are we, hey, this is really the way to go? I'm still working this out in my own head, so I'm not saying that this is the way it is or the way it isn't. We'll be right back. We'll get your thoughts on this. Stick around. Welcome back. It's coming up on 22 minutes past the hour. So I was just talking about how, and thinking out loud about how I watched Beto O'Rourke's opening performance this morning in a little town in Iowa. And he was asked about Medicare for all, and he didn't embrace Medicare for all, but he embraced the value of everybody having access to health care. Well, there's all kinds of ways to get there. Switzerland has no national health care program. But every citizen in Switzerland is required to have health insurance, and all the health insurance companies are required to be not-for-profit. And they're not allowed to pay their CEOs huge amounts of money. So basically, Switzerland has a very good national health care system with a competitive nonprofit marketplace. It works for them. In Germany, it's a little closer to a hybrid, part government paying it, part nonprofit health insurance companies. In France, it's more of a single-payer system entirely. The government pays for everything. In the United Kingdom, the government not only pays for it, but it actually owns the hospitals and employs the doctors, more socialized medicine. There's this whole spectrum of ways to get there. In Canada, it's Medicare for all. And so the question, if you go back to Bill Clinton's New Covenant speech in 1992, he was, well, let me back up just a little bit. So the question is it more important right now for us that our candidates embrace our specific idea of the best solutions, in other words, policies? Or, for example, saying, yes, I'm in favor of Medicare for all. Or, yes, I'm in favor of a Swiss kind of system where all the insurance companies are forced to become nonprofits and are heavily, heavily regulated. Is it more important to endorse specific policies when a Democrat is running for president, or should they embrace values? Yesterday, Mark Pocan was telling us Nancy Pelosi taught him when he first came to Congress that values are more important than policies. Values are the big bowl in which you have the little pieces that are the policies. So if your value is health care for all, there's a bunch of different policies that'll get you there. And and they're very different, but they all work. I mean, the one that doesn't work is what we have right now. We know that. So Beto was asked about Medicare for all, and he said, I embrace, universal health care. He was asked about the Green New Deal, which is a collection of specific policy efforts, although they're not, each one of them is really, kind of a broad category. And he instead embraced the value of getting control of climate change and talked about how his 12-year-old son Ulysses is going to be, his age in 2050. And, we're all sitting here going, by 2050, the world is going to be a very different place. We're going to have, climate refugees. It's going to be a wildly different place. And his son's child, who will be his age in 2100, that's when we're talking about, major extinctions that could include the human race. So he talked about the value, but he didn't talk about specifically the Green New Deal. He didn't endorse it, didn't condemn it. And I suspect that he's going to be doing a lot of this. So I can make a case, and I think I just did, that that's a fine thing to do. By embracing the values rather than the policies, you don't give your opponents or the Republicans something to beat you up with. Saying, yeah, I embrace the value of, immigration reform policy, but I'm not going to tell you the specifics. It's very smart politics. It's arguably what got both Bill Clinton and Barack Obama elected. They embraced the values without the specifics. Bill Clinton's New Covenant speech in 1992, his stump speech, I reprinted it in my book Threshold, was a brilliant articulation of progressive values. Unfortunately, he didn't govern with those things. Now, you can argue he, had resistance from powerful entities. He had resistance from, whatever. But, I'm not, frankly, any longer willing to cut Bill Clinton any slack at all. But, he didn't govern that way. Barack Obama campaigned on hope and change and said that he was embracing the value of universal health care. Well, he actually followed through on that value, and a number of others, until the Republicans got a veto-proof majority in the Senate, and, that was the end of that. And, for a couple of years, he was just blocked. He couldn't even get a federal judge through. He couldn't even get a Supreme Court justice through. This is how vicious and sick and twisted Mitch McConnell is and was in his behavior. But still, Obama embraced values rather than specific policies. So should we be suspicious of Beto O'Rourke that he's pulling a Bill Clinton on us by embracing values but not talking about policy? Or should we be glad that he's doing this because this is a better electoral strategy? And what do you think of him as a candidate? He just announced today. I'm kind of waiting to see how it all shakes out.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
And I'm very much looking forward to the Democratic primary, the debates and just the whole process. This is going to be fascinating. We got a great field. Beto O'Rourke came out and said he's going to be running for president, or he is running for president. We now have a growing and extraordinary field of candidates. And unlike the Republican primaries, 4 years ago now, essentially, is when it all kicked off, we are lacking the hustlers and con men that the Republicans had. I mean, they literally had people on stage who, weren't seriously running for president. They were running to raise their profile. They were running to sell more books. They were running, the scam that the Republicans do. I mean, they're in it for the money. Donald Trump, in fact, was in it for the money. He didn't expect to become president. He didn't even really want to be the Republican nominee. He just wanted to build Trump Tower in Moscow and keep it going in Turkey and keep it going in Panama, Panama City, and just keep all his little scams running. And it didn't quite work out that way, tragically. But the cool thing is that now on the Democratic side, we've got a solid field, and it's growing. In all probability, Joe Biden's going to jump in this week or next too, and that's like good news. The bad news is that watching these announcements about Beto this morning on network TV and going back and forth between CNN and MSNBC, immediately the question that's being asked is he too liberal? It's like, really? This is what's so great about Free Speech TV. And it's why you need to call right now, 877-378-8669, and say, yeah, I want to give, $20 a month for forever. Just sign me up. Because I want to be part of Free Speech TV and make it happen. Because here on Free Speech TV, you're going to hear honest, clear, articulate discussions. I mean, with like laying out the individual pieces of the plans. Like the ways Bones articulate, it's just saying, here it is, right? Here's what's going on. Without we need independent media. We really do. And the fact that you're watching right now is proof of that. So 2 things I'd ask of you. Number 1, won't cost you a penny. Seriously. Please make a commitment to yourself that over the course of this week and this weekend, the next 4 days, that you're going to reach out successfully to at least one person to introduce them to Free Speech TV. Now, you may have to talk to 4 or 5 people about Free Speech TV to get that one person to actually turn it on and watch for a few hours and then come back and have a conversation with you about it. But that would be an incredible thing. If even half of the people watching Free Speech TV did that, we would grow our audience by half again, right? And then these fund drives wouldn't need to be as long. And number 2, make a contribution and make it a recurring contribution. Because for every person who signs up to be a sustaining member, a member who's going to be giving every single month no matter what, that's one less person that we need to beg for money from during these fund drives, these kind of time-delimited fund drives. And eventually we can get to the point where they don't need to be as long and they don't need to be as frantic, and we've got a solid base of support. So those 2 things are, like, for today at the top of my list, because we only have 2 days left, today and tomorrow, for this fund drive. This is the last chance, right? Today and tomorrow, the last chance to exercise your opinion, as it were, to say, yes, I support Free Speech TV. I am calling 877-378-8669 right now. With a $20 gift, you get the Free Speech TV flag lapel pin or the Jesus Was a Socialist bumper sticker, your choice. With a $60 gift, you get the Free Speech TV set of 6 stickers. I don't want to try and say that fast 3 times. With a $72 gift, you get an autographed copy of my new book, The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment, which We're actually this afternoon starting to record the audiobook edition of, but you'll get the actual physical book edition of it, which will be available in May. With a $100 gift, you get the Free Speech TV t-shirt. With a $200 gift, you get the Free Speech TV hoodie. With a $360 gift, you get all of the above. With a $500 gift, you can attend our webinar on dealing with, this is not so much healing from, but dealing with trauma, stress, anxiety, things like that. And with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland and hang out here for the last hour of the show, and I'll take you to lunch. But all of that is, that's all great stuff. But the most important thing is do something, whether it's talking to friends and neighbors about Free Speech TV, or whether it's calling right now, 877-378-8669. But this is your tag, your it moment. We need your help. We really and truly do. 877-378-8669. We're still way behind our financial goals. So please call now and make whatever contribution you can.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, and pick up your thoughts here. Jared in Downingtown, Pennsylvania. Hey, Jared, what's on your mind?
Hello, Tom. I want to talk about Beto, and there was a specific question that I was interested in, but I didn't really quite catch it about Beto. It was about the issue of UBI, and I didn't quite catch what he said about the universal basic income. Did you?
He punted. He went off. He went off on a as I recall, on a conversation about how our economy is fundamentally unfair to people. Yeah, he didn't say yes, he didn't say no. And that was the case with most of these issues where people were asking specifics.
I think we should definitely keep an eye on that issue, because that issue, I think, is going to change radically for this election, because we're seeing more and more that people are increasingly realizing that working and, just the idea of automation, like eventually we're going to just have to start working less and less. And we should start getting paid a income that will cover us and everybody in this country, because, there's literally nothing else we can do. The job.
Yeah.
Even if they, quote, brought the jobs back overseas, you realize that the capitalists would turn our countries into third world places. They would literally.
Well, it's not so much that, Jared. It's that a factory in Detroit that used to have 30,000 people making cars is now in China, but instead of 30,000 Chinese making those cars, it's heavily automated, and it's got maybe 6,000 Chinese making cars. And if we brought it back to Detroit and it was rebuilt from scratch with the latest generation robots, because the Chinese robots are probably a decade old, it might only be 500 people making cars. Tesla is showing us this. So bringing the jobs home is great. Bringing the manufacturing home is great. And the reason for that is that brings home the profits. We built modern China through these insane, stupid trade policies that started with Richard Nixon, went on steroids with Reagan, and then were amplified by Clinton. We literally built modern China. I lived there the month of November 1988 or 86, I guess it was. And there was literally not a single skyscraper in the city. There were, no cars on the streets. It was just an ocean of black bicycles. It was a completely different place. We transformed that by putting all our jobs there, and stupidly going along with their trade policies. All that's true. But bringing those jobs home will bring back a lot of that wealth to the United States, but it's not necessarily going to bring back the jobs. So I agree with you. The UBI issue is going to be one of the more important issues that we've got to talk about. And frankly, I think one of the ways to fund it is to have a tax on technology that replaces humans, and have technology, basically robots and artificial intelligence, start paying Social Security tax and Medicare tax, because it's replacing humans. As far as I know, if you're going to criticize Beto for not endorsing it, I think Andrew Yang is the only Democratic presidential candidate, and I'm not even sure he's going to make it into the debates, because you got to get 65,000 people, who's endorsed it.
I heard that he did get into the debates, which is really good news, because I am increasingly turning more to Andrew Yang, because it seems like he's the only one who seems to at least be bringing this issue up. So even if he doesn't win the primary, we at least start talking about this issue. And why is it that, why is it we don't just work, 15 hours a week? Why are we working 40 hours a week? Why are we being wage slaves to this system when we could be spending more time doing more productive things with our life?
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that are just kind of leftover anachronisms. Summer vacation, the way that we do it here in North America is basically a vestige of harvest season, and we're no longer an agricultural economy. In Europe, everybody just takes the entire month of August off. But and there's a whole different economy around that. Actually, it's very, very well organized, and it's very interesting to live there and watch it happen. But we don't do that that way here in the United States. So that's left over from that. The 40-hour week from agriculture, from when we were a largely agricultural nation, which is like pre-1870. Now, we have all these job positions and, fight for a 40-hour work week and all this stuff that are vestiges of the Industrial Revolution, of how much time, it takes somebody working in a factory. What's the maximum amount of time that you can have somebody put bolts on screws before they fall down from exhaustion, or before, you've exceeded what's fair for them? Well, as AI and robots make productivity increased, that's no longer necessary. So, Jared, you raised some really interesting things, and you're right. Andrew Yang is talking about these things. And there are some candidates like Andrew Yang and Marianne Williamson who a lot of people are actually, giving $10 gifts to, not because they necessarily think that person even has a chance at becoming president, although they may, but mostly because at the very get-go, they want them to be on that debate stage. They want their voices to be heard. Marianne's position on this kind of spiritual renewal and the role of women in the economy and in politics. Tulsi Gabbard's position on the war. Some people are tossing money at her because you've got to have 65,000 small donors in order to get on that debate stage. So, we'll see how it shakes out. I'm fascinated by the whole thing. Carol in St. Paul. Hey, Carol, what's up?
Oh, hey, Tom. I know this isn't Anything Goes Friday, but after listening to the commentators after Beto's speech and hearing the too liberal, I'm thinking that for people in our age group, maybe a few a little bit younger, definitely everybody older, why don't we start somehow tying the Republican Party to communists?
Well, instead of communists, I'd tie them to Stalinists.
Okay, that's
because Stalin was a cult figure just like Trump is.
And we could point to the NRA, Stalinist-supported NRA that has infiltrated our company, and start talking about the infiltration of America, the undoing of America by the communist-supported Republican Party.
Yeah, or this, yeah. No, I get it, Carol, but I want to get back to this conversation about Beto. Thanks for the call. Mark in Roselle, Illinois. Hey, Mark, what's on your mind?
Yes, Tom. I think that Beto is, at this point, is really running more for VP than for president. I think he might make a great candidate, but I think having a Texan on the Democratic ticket, it may put Texas in play for their Democrats. And if they win Texas, they win the election.
Yeah, this was John Kennedy's math. He was a Massachusetts liberal, and if Kamala Harris, who is a California liberal, or if Elizabeth Warren, who's a Massachusetts liberal, ends up at the top of the ticket, Beto, a Texan who is he's not Hispanic, but he speaks fluent Spanish and has a really great relationship with the Hispanic community. He, in addition to other things, might make a good VP. So you think he's running for VP? I'm not. I think he's actually running for president. He's about the same age as Jack Kennedy was, and presentation-wise, he comes across to me in many of the same ways that Bobby Kennedy did. I just wish he was a little more aggressive in being progressive on his policies, but we'll see. It's John in Los Angeles, listening on KPFK. You wanted to weigh in on this, John. What's up?
Well, yes, I love you, Professor Tom. I love you.
But
yes,
I know there's a but coming.
I'm a mathematician, so when you said yesterday that Rokana told you about how Nancy Pelosi said instead of the policies, it's the values.
Well, you start with the values, yeah.
Mathematically, that's incorrect, and that's why they don't get nothing done there.
Okay.
Values plus values equals policy. V1 plus V2 equals P. And that's how, because you build a policy on the values that are set inside. That's how you write any bill. If you're going to write a bill, you're going to, let's just take Medicare for all.
Well, John, hang on just a second, John. I agree with you. I thought that's what I was saying.
No, you said, no, you was like, what's more, you was, how he said it, you said that the policies, the values are more important than the policy.
Correct. Yeah, you establish the value. We want everybody in this country to have health care. Now, once we've all agreed on that, then let's have a congressional committee get together and work out how to do it.
No, actually, that's what I'm trying to tell you. You got it backwards.
Okay.
The policy is for everyone to get health care. The value is, okay, what does it take to make that happen? So you got X, which would be the insurance company. You got X2, which would be the pharmaceutical company. You got X3, and so on and so forth. Those are your values.
Yeah. Okay. I think you and I have a reverse. You know, our logical path, our A to B, is reverse of each other in terms of our definition of values and policy. But I get what you're saying, John, and you know, not wanting to turn this into just a giant semantic battle. I think the bottom line is that we both agree, I hope, John, that what we need to do is establish priorities and then figure out how we're going to get there. Can we say that?
I'll do more than say that, yes. And personally, I think we need universal health care.
There you go. Okay, John, thanks a lot for the call, and thanks for listening to KPFK. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
So what do you think about Beto O'Rourke? Is this the guy? We'll find out. And welcome back. Bob in Tahlequah, Oklahoma. Hey, Bob, thanks for watching Free Speech TV. What's on your mind?
Hello, Tom. Yeah, I think O'Rourke is going to ride the popular wave as long as he can and get what he can out of this. He's young. Jay Inslee, on the other hand, he will tell you more about specifically what he intends to do. He's got a lot of experience, having worked on the Apollo project for some time with economic issues and solutions.
Well, he's been a governor, too, and as a governor, he's got a lot of executive experience. I have a lot of respect for Jay Inslee. I just don't think he has... Well, actually, I'm not going to say, you know, I'm right at this moment, I'm going to stop saying anything that's a negative qualification about any Democrat, because who knows? I mean, Jay Inslee might be the next president of the United States.
Well, yeah, and my point, generally speaking here, Tom, and just quickly get off, is just these are all politicians. They want the vote, and they want to win, or they're testing the waters to see how their future situation.
Excuse me. I agree, Bob. And the good news on our side, pardon me, is that all of these people, all of these politicians actually are running for president of the United States, or at the worst, maybe vice president. You know, arguably in the case of Beto O'Rourke or Tulsi Gabbard or somebody like that. But I think that actually they're all running for president, whereas what we saw in the Republican race was you had a bunch of people, you know, the Rick Santorums of the world, the Donald Trumps of the world, who literally were not running for president of the United States. They were running to increase their ability to earn a living after the election, after they'd lost the election. They were running as a way of building their brand, and we're not seeing that happen in the Democratic side, and thank God. Of course, Democrats tend not to tolerate hustlers like that. Robert in Portland, listening on X-Ray FM. Hey, Robert, what's up?
Hey, Tom. Love your show. Local listener. Thank you. You know, Beto O'Rourke, I really feel, and I have felt this since a couple years ago that he would make a great vice president. Just, he's got a young, fresh face, and I think he appeals to the younger voters. But don't really know policies. I mean, he's kind of in the middle there, and I think he would be a great matchup with vice president with Elizabeth Warren. The Warren ticket would be phenomenal. But I also feel that a Bernie Sanders, Stacey Abrams ticket would be excellent as well.
I think that would be an amazing ticket. Right now, I don't see a single Democratic candidate who I think could not beat Donald Trump. And yeah, and that's the bottom line. And it just makes me crazy. It makes me want to bang my head against the wall when I turn on the TV and I see these asinine, for lack of a better word, a little more obscene one comes to mind, but I'm not going to use it. Pundits going, I don't know, Elizabeth Warren too liberal, Bernie Sanders too socialist, maybe Amy Klobuchar is too liberal. I don't know. Is she a centrist? It's like, come on, give me a break. We don't need Republicans to vote for our candidate in order for our candidate to become president of the United States. We need Democrats to show up in large numbers. It's really that simple. You got to energize and activate the base. Robert, I'm sorry, say that again.
Great, Bob. Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot, Robert. Good to hear from you. We'll be back with more of your thoughts on, Beto's announcement today and where this takes the Democratic Party right after this. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Hugh in Compton, California. Hey, Hugh, thanks for watching Free Speech TV. Beto O'Rourke, by the way, just FYI, he lost the Texas Senate race to Ted Cruz, so right now he's out of a job. What are your thoughts on his future, Hugh?
I think that if progressive and Democrats really want to be effective and make change in this country, just like you stated, his name recognition is based on the fact that he lost or did not unseat one of the most unpopular senators in the Congress. And if he really he's a young man, and if he would want to prove his political bona fides, maybe he could be in Texas and unseat someone like John Cornyn or one of those guys.
Yeah, Cornyn's up for re-election in a year and a half.
Right. And he's a young man, and if he has political bona fides, I believe that he could say, because America has to realize that the president doesn't actually do it. He's going to need the cooperation of a Congress and a Senate to push through any policies.
Yeah, no, I get that, and I think that this is probably the internal debate that Beto was having. Was because he's going to have to declare, right, if he's going to run for public office, and he's been a three-term congressman and member of the new Democrat coalition in the House of Representatives. Is he going to run for the United States Senate for John Cornyn's seat, which would mean that the announcement today, instead of being I'm running for president, would have been I'm running in the Democratic primary to beat John Cornyn. I mean, he basically had to make a choice. Is he going to run for the Senate in Texas? Is he going to run for the president of the United States? And he made that choice, apparently in the last week or so, and rolled out that decision this morning. So that door is closed now, Hugh, as far as I know.
Okay.
I mean, maybe I'm missing something about Texas politics, but, in any other state, that door would be closed. Hugh, thanks for the call. Joe in Albuquerque, New Mexico, listening on 1350 AM. Hey, Joe, what's up?
Hey, good morning. I think you're imitating Chris Matthews a little bit ago. As far as, who should run, et cetera. But my point regarding Beto and all politicians is that we need to campaign on both values and policies. And we need to give examples specifically with regards to health care. I don't want to hear that everyone should have access to health care anymore. We did that,
What's what Ronald Reagan said?
Election. Pardon?
Ronald Reagan campaigned on everyone having access to health care when he ran for re-election in 1986 or 1984. And then the next year, I think 85, he signed legislation that gave everybody in America access to health care. He passed a law that said that emergency rooms can no longer turn you away because you can't afford to pay. And thus, emergency rooms became the new doctor's offices for poor people, and it created a crisis for the country. But the fact of the matter is that Reagan gave us universal access to health care, and Republicans to this day are saying, well, everybody in America has access to health care. What are you worried about? And so, yeah, I agree. We got to beware of BS language, of weasel words. I'm with you, Joe.
Well, my point is that we've been arguing and debating over health care since the Affordable Care Act has been implemented. That's 10 years of my life, okay? And the Republicans, and we need to call them out, have been doing nothing but trying to obstruct, you know, the successfulness.
Oh, not just that. Trump just proposed a budget that cuts almost $1 trillion out of Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security.
Yeah, exactly. And with regard to prescription drugs, again, I called before letting you know that I had to get a steroid inhaler, which was going to cost me $400 and some because I did not meet my deductible. And I have excellent health care provided by the government.
Right.
So we need to campaign not just on the macro level like Beto usually does. And if you ask me, I kind of think, and I'm tired of politicians kind of sidestepping the questions. Be a little bit more specific and talk specifically about the policies that are going, the obstructionists the Republicans have towards the policies that Obama implemented.
Yeah.
You know, I'm tired of people preaching to me. I want solutions, and that's what we should run on as a party.
You know, up to this point in this conversation, Joe, I've largely not taken a position on any of this because I just wanted to hear what everybody had to say, and I still want to hear what everybody has to say. But I will say right now, I agree with you, and I would like to see.
Thank you.
Thank you. I would much rather have a politician come out and say, you know, my value is everybody has access to health care. I think the best way to get there is Medicare for all, or I think the best way to get there is a VA for all, basically what the UK has. But, you know, I may change my mind on how we get there once we get into making the sausage, but this is what I think is best. That's what I would like to hear, which is not what I heard this morning. But you know, I'm not hearing that from most of the candidates, frankly. Caddy in Seattle. Hey, Caddy, thanks for listening to KBCS. What's up?
Well, actually, my name is Patty. But
oh, Patty, I'm sorry.
Call. You know, if Bernie Sanders and Pramila Jayapal can present very specific Medicare for all plans that have very specific details, then that's good enough for me. And I think that that's an argument against just going for values rather than policies.
Right.
And there are many different approaches to Medicare for all, so I hope people are aware of that. Some of them, one of them is a public option, and others are buy-ins. And I think Pramila Jayapal and Bernie Sanders have the best plans for Medicare for all, and they're very specific.
I agree.
Secondly, I'm very suspicious of Beto O'Rourke, and I haven't heard anybody voice any concerns about him. They say he's a fresh face, he's young, he's liberal. I don't know if he's liberal or not. I don't know if you're aware of this, but I've read that he's voted with the Republicans many times.
Oh, yeah. David Sirota famously, back a few months ago, wrote a piece for The Guardian. The headline is Beto O'Rourke frequently voted for Republican legislation, analysis reveals. You know, whether that's, you know, a matter of, you know, a too high a bar purity test, or it's true that Beto was, you know, in there with, you know, Tim Ryan and the other new Dems, you know, the kind of Bill Clinton Democrats, and sold out a few times, and if so, why? You know, I don't know. And also, you know, in this when he ran for the Senate, he didn't take money from those groups, from those PACs and those corporations, and so it's entirely possible that he's had an epiphany, a religious awakening, as it were.
Well, now that he's ready to run for president, but
I think when he ran for Senate. When he ran for the Senate. Although, again, I still want to know a lot more about this guy. I guess that's the bottom line. Patty, thank you for the call. And I think that's what you're saying, right, Patty, essentially? Or are you saying that you're skeptical?
I'm saying that I'm skeptical, and I'm saying we should look at his voting record instead of just going all out for him without really examining his voting record.
I cannot disagree with that. Patty, thank you very much for the call. We'll be right back.
listening to Thom Hartmann.
We say fight back!
Beto O'Rourke came out and said he's going to be running for president, or he is running for president. We now have a growing and extraordinary field of candidates. And unlike the Republican primaries, 4 years ago now, essentially, is when it all kicked off, we are lacking the hustlers and con men that the Republicans had. I mean, they literally had people on stage who, weren't seriously running for president. They were running to raise their profile. They were running to sell more books. They were running, the scam that the Republicans do. I mean, they're in it for the money. Donald Trump, in fact, was in it for the money. He didn't expect to become president. He didn't even really want to be the Republican nominee. He just wanted to build Trump Tower in Moscow and keep it going in Turkey and keep it going in Panama, Panama City, and just keep all his little scams running. And, it didn't quite work out that way, tragically. But the cool thing is that now on the Democratic side, we've got a solid field, and it's growing. In all probability, Joe Biden's going to jump in this week or next, too. And that's like good news. The bad news is that, watching these announcements about Beto this morning on network TV and going back and forth between CNN and MSNBC, immediately the question that's being asked is he too liberal? It's like, really? This is what's so great about Free Speech TV. And it's why you need to call right now, 877-378-8669, and say, yeah, I want to give, $20 a month for forever. Just sign me up. Because I want to be part of Free Speech TV and make it happen. Because here on Free Speech TV, you're going to hear honest, clear, articulate discussions. I mean, with like laying out the individual pieces of the plans. Like the ways Bones articulate, it's just saying, here it is, right? Here's what's going on. Without we need independent media. We really do. And the fact that you're watching right now is proof of that. So 2 things I'd ask of you. Number 1, won't cost you a penny. Seriously. Please make a commitment to yourself that over the course of this week and this weekend, the next 4 days, that you're going to reach out successfully to at least one person to introduce them to Free Speech TV. Now, you may have to talk to 4 or 5 people about Free Speech TV to get that one person to actually turn it on and watch for a few hours and then come back and have a conversation with you about it. But that would be an incredible thing. If even half of the people watching Free Speech TV did that, we would grow our audience by half again, right? And then these fund drives wouldn't need to be as long. And number 2, make a contribution and make it a recurring contribution. Because for every person who signs up to be a sustaining member, a member who's going to be giving every single month no matter what, that's one less person that we need to beg for money from during these fund drives, these kind of time-delimited fund drives. And eventually we can get to the point where they don't need to be as long and they don't need to be as frantic, and, we've got a solid base of support. So those two things are like, for today, at the top of my list, because we only have 2 days left, today and tomorrow, for this fund drive. This is the last chance, right? Today and tomorrow, the last chance to exercise your opinion, as it were, to say, yes, I support Free Speech TV. I am calling 877-378-8669 right now. With a $20 gift, you get the Free Speech TV flag lapel pin or the Jesus Was a Socialist bumper sticker, your choice. With a $60 gift, you get the Free Speech TV set of six stickers. I don't want to try and say that fast 3 times. With a $72 gift, you get an autographed copy of my new book, The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment, which we're actually this afternoon starting to record the audiobook edition of, but you'll get the actual physical book edition of it, which will be available in May. With a $100 gift, you get the Free Speech TV t-shirt. With a $200 gift, you get the Free Speech TV hoodie. With a $360 gift, you get all of the above. With a $500 gift, you can attend our webinar on dealing with, this is not so much healing from, but dealing with trauma, stress, anxiety, things like that. And with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland and hang out here for the last hour of the show, and I'll take you to lunch. But all of that is, that's all great stuff. But the most important thing is do something, whether it's talking to friends and neighbors about Free Speech TV, or whether it's calling right now, 877-378-8669. But this is your tag, your it moment. We need your help. We really and truly do. 877-378-8669. We're still way behind our financial goals. So please call now and make whatever contribution you can. Hey, over at ThomHartmann.com, we've got some really cool stuff. A lot of people don't realize that we produce a daily newsletter. And Sue puts we call it Sue's Daily Stack on there, which is literally a link to every story that I've talked about in the show. So all the research is right there. It's free. We don't share or sell our subscriber list. It's, there's just, it's there. It's there for you. And it's over at ThomHartmann.com. You can sign up for the free newsletter. You also can get my big picture take of the day, which is exclusively over at our website at ThomHartmann.com, as well as links to our videos, the book reports we typically do every day, all this stuff and more. It's all there at ThomHartmann.com. So check it out and sign up for our newsletter. I think you'll really enjoy it and appreciate it and find a lot of value there. We put a lot of work into this stuff. And you'll find it all right there on our website at ThomHartmann.com. And be sure to check out the newsletter and sign up for it. It's great.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. We've been talking over the last hour about Beto O'Rourke, and he threw his hat in the ring this morning. Time will tell what kind of candidate he's going to be, and some of the conversation was about what kind of a state legislator he was. But moving along, we'll come back to this topic and we'll continue discussing it and take your calls on it. But there are other and I think in some ways larger issues right now that I want to dig into, and one of them with Professor Richard Wolff, the economist, the co-founder of Democracy at Work, the author most recently of Capitalism's Crisis Deepens, Essays on the Global Economic Meltdown. His website's democracyatwork.info and rdwolf with 2fs.com. You can tweet him at Prof. Wolf. Professor Wolff, first of all, welcome back to the program. Thank you so much for being with us again this week.
Glad to be here, Tom.
Thank you. I got a really big question for you here. I've been reading this book about the collapse of the Roman Empire. I have a passing familiarity with the unwinding, essentially, of the British Empire. The Roman Empire, kind of collapsed from expansion and war and corruption. The British Empire basically unwound, particularly following World War I. Nate was telling me a couple days ago that literally every 3 days, if you were to evenly space them out throughout the year, every 3 days, some country would be celebrating their independence from the British Empire. And I think if we went back 1,000 years, you'd find the same thing for the Roman Empire. So the question is, how do empires end? And the United States, with over 700 military bases around the world, I think qualifies as empire and has arguably for at least the last century. How might the American empire end? I mean, will it collapse or will it unwind or will it not end? And to what extent does all of this tie into both macro and microeconomics?
Well, these are the enormous questions, and my hat is off to you, as it has been in the past, for having the courage to put them on the agenda and to talk about them. Yes, of course, the United States operates an empire. The U.S. dollar is the world currency, certainly more than anything else is. We have more military bases around the world than the rest of the world combined has. We spend more on the maintenance of our military than the next 5 countries in the world combined spend, and that includes Russia and China, etc. So, yes, we certainly have an empire, and we built it up over time. We were the colony of another empire, the British one, as you mentioned. So we, in a sense, were trained on both ends of this experience. But at the same time, there really is no way out of the conclusion, at least I've drawn it, and I'm far from the only one, that we not only will follow in the footsteps of others, that is, they arose, they grew over time, then they overextended themselves, and then they disintegrated. We obviously were born, we've grown over time, and my sense more each passing day is that ours is disintegrating. And we ought to be very conscious of watching our old colonial master, Britain, because the spectacle, for example, of the last 2 to 3 years of a dysfunctional economic system. Working people in Britain have suffered much more than the Americans since the crash of 2008. Their real wages have gone down significantly, whereas in this country they merely stagnated. And watch over the last 2 years, as they have a dysfunctional parliament and a dysfunctional political system, which, instead of facing the basic problems of a shrinking economy, are busy deciding whether to be in or out of Europe, as if that's going to solve any of the major problems they have. Indeed, most British people now recognize that they've just wasted 2.5 years, lost time, which might have been spent to solve their problems. Having said all that, I think the United States is in exactly the same position. We have an increasingly dysfunctional political system. The people with the money have bought their control of it, as you so well document. You have a series of societies on the periphery of our empire. Let me just pick 3 of them: Iraq, Afghanistan, and Venezuela, that are in various ways demonstrating that even with the enormous preponderance of our military power, we are powerless to basically control the rest of the world, and we should get over it. Otherwise, we will, in fact, fare more or less the way the previous empires, who made the same set of mistakes from which you would have thought we might learn.
Mm-hmm. So do we, I mean, you know, you had, in fact, before the British Empire, well, maybe not before you, France had somewhat of an empire. The Dutch trading companies in the 1500s were empires. Spain, at the time of the discovery of the United States, or of North America, empire. Which direction do you expect us to go? Do you think that it's going to be a spectacular collapse like Rome did? Of course, that took 300 years. Or is it, is it going to be a slow devolution? And what should we be doing to facilitate this? I mean, beyond the obvious stuff of closing some of our bases and stopping the stupid foreign wars, to quote Donald Trump, a very popular phrase, by the way.
Yes. Well, I think we are in the sad position of having, especially recently, put into office political figures who, for their own narrow purposes, but also caught up in the delusions of our time,
think that unlike every other empire, ours isn't fated to decline. Ours will escape the history that has bedeviled every single other. And besides the French and Spanish and Dutch, which you rightly mentioned, there's the Greeks that existed before that, and a whole bunch of others in other parts of the world. The story is always the same. It ends, and it usually ends badly. As to what we could do, it's the unpopular thing, but there is no shortage. The United States, like the other empire centers, Britain, Holland, and so on, gathered the resources of the world, plundered them, brought them home, subordinated the people and the cultures elsewhere. I noticed you were reading Frantz Fanon, who is a genius at pulling all that out. Mm-hmm. They subordinated the economies, the cultures, the politics of the rest of the world, building up the anger, the bitterness that then bedevils them when it comes time to unwind that empire. So for me, the only hope would be to begin to recognize what you've done and to begin to reorganize the world economy, really do foreign aid, not out of some charitable notion of helping others, which would be fine, but in a self-interested notion that if you recognize the unfairness of what has been done, the fact that wages in the West are several times higher than they are everywhere else, leading to the very outsourcing of jobs that now bedevils the United States, much as comparable things did to earlier empires. If you changed your politics at home and abroad, changed your economic system so that the inequality wasn't a staringly obvious consequence of it, then you might have a basis to say to the rest of the world, let's all get together and reorganize things so that we don't have yet another empire crashing in flames and bitterness and the rise of a competing society.
Right.
Indeed, if I could, the very crazy stuff about the Huawei Corporation and the deals with China, these are the behaviors, very classic, of an economy being challenged by a newcomer and blaming the newcomer for cheating and doing things unfairly, just what the British accused the Germans of, just what the British and the Germans accused the Americans of 150 years ago when we were in that situation. It's almost as if condemned to repeat because you don't face what your own history would and should be teaching you.
Right, and then you're confronting the, Thucydides, I forget how to pronounce the Greek philosopher, the trap, of when an emerging empire overtakes in terms of economy and military an existing or an aging empire, then war becomes inevitable. And that's a pretty scary thing, which leads to my last question, which is
when empires crash, it's often in a military form, and those quote-unquote barbarians, so declared, of course, by the dying empire, those barbarians turn out to be very, very smart people who figured out how to outdo the empire and to take advantage of its internal contradictions, its overreach, its imagination that it could control the whole world and blaming everybody else for its difficulties. Then they discover that these people are absolutely clever enough to not only help you disappear, but to build an empire in its place.
So it brings me to my last question. We have about a minute and a half till we hit a hard break here, and that is, it seems like there's two dimensions to empire. There's an economic dimension. Empire is where you don't just have multilateral trade deals. It's where you actually reach out and control the economies and extract from the economies of other countries. And then there's the military part of it, which is how, in some cases, you enforce that economic, although, China seems like they think with their Belt and Road policy they can do it purely with economics. How has the American empire run historically along those two tracks, and how do you see it unwinding, if I may ask a huge question with 1 minute until we hit a break?
Well, I think it operated along both those tracks. It has this military base mentality. At the end of World War II, when everybody else was going back to peace, we maintained our military by having this network of international bases, using the Soviet threat, etc. And certainly we've done it economically. We have subordinated the rest of the world. The first book I ever wrote at the Yale University Press was how the British
decided to make Kenya in East Africa a place that grows coffee because that was convenient to the British coffee business. Or Uganda, a place that grows cotton, neither of which were grown there as particularly important crops. So that those countries are still dependent on those crops that were created for a colonial empire, which is half of their problem. As to how it'll unwind, I think you're going to get protest after protest. You can put one down in Venezuela today, but it'll pop up somewhere else. It is the problem of our age, and pretending it isn't going to make it go away.
And we pretty much have to acknowledge that this is the era of the end of empire, do we not?
That's right.
Yeah. Professor Richard Wolff, the economist, co-founder of Democracy at Work.info, author most recently, Capitalism's Crisis Deepens. Thank you so much, Dr. Wolff.
Thank you, Tom. Look forward to talking with you again.
Me too. Thank you so much for being with us. We'll be back.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
So what do you think about Beto? We'll be back with your thoughts on that and mine right after this. And welcome back. Larry in Eugene, Oregon. Hey, Larry, thanks for watching Free Speech. What's up?
Morning, Tom. First of all, I'd like to compliment you on your very strong statement about we don't need Republicans to elect Democratic candidates.
Right.
I've been listening to MSNBC this morning, and to hear those guys talk about it, if we don't convert Mitch McConnell, we can't win anything.
Yeah, they're just... it disgusts
ridiculous.
Me, frankly.
But also, a couple of things. Franz Fanon was very popular in the 60s around Berkeley, where I was going to school, and along with him were people that had taken off of the idea from, I think, his work about false consciousness, which kind of ties in with the phenomenon of Fox News and Trump's popularity.
Mm-hmm.
But more importantly, back to O'Rourke, I really would love to see him as head of the DNC. His charismatic energy would just be so valuable there. I think more than an elected office. I'm going to say I don't think he'll be president, but he could. But I'd love to see this guy in a place where that kind of energy and enthusiasm, which in his case seems endless, would really help overall.
Yeah. Oh, we'll see.
What do you think about the idea of the DNC, though?
I think that the head of the DNC is not a particularly powerful position. It's not a real high-profile position. It could have a lot more juice if somebody who is as charismatic as Beto is, and yeah, that's one of the big things he has going for him is his charisma, was to take that position. I'm still wanting to resolve the aggressive support of many of the Clinton-associated think tanks and the New Democratic Coalition with Beto. And I don't know. I want to learn more about this guy. I am somewhat skeptical, but I'm starting out somewhat skeptical about, frankly, every single one of the Democratic candidates, each one for a different reason. In terms of my, not skepticism about whether I think they should become president or are good Democrats or anything, but skepticism about, exactly what's it going to take in this environment to beat Donald Trump and to be a successful president. And those are two things that have to happen at the same time. We can't just kind of, go into the middle of this thing. So. Larry, that's why I don't think, well, first of all, he's not going to run for the head of the DNC. He's running for president. Do you think he has a shot?
Of course. I realize that. But
or do you think he's running for president or vice president?
I don't think that vice president is a waste of his energy.
Yeah.
He has too much upfront stuff going for him to be hidden into the... vice presidency is too quiet a position for him.
Well, perhaps. I mean, we've had vice presidents. Dick Cheney basically ran the White House.
I was thinking of him too. But Beto O'Rourke is not a
And Lyndon Johnson was Jack Kennedy's vice president, and Kennedy hated Johnson. He put him on the ticket because he needed a Democrat from Texas, you know. Which,
that's correct. That's correct.
And here's Beto. He's a Democrat from Texas, and Jack Kennedy was a Northeastern liberal. So we know that a ticket of a Massachusetts liberal and a Texas Democrat moderate can actually win, or at least it could win in 1960. Question is, can it win in 2020? We'll find out. Or we won't. It's 22 minutes past the hour. Hey, over at ThomHartmann.com, we've got some really cool stuff. A lot of people don't realize that we produce a daily newsletter, and Sue puts we call it Sue's Daily Stack on there, which is literally a link to every story that I've talked about in the show. So all the research is right there. It's free. We don't share or sell our subscriber list. It's there's just it's there. It's there for you, and it's over at ThomHartmann.com. You can sign up for the free newsletter. You also can get my big picture take of the day, which is exclusively over at our website at ThomHartmann.com, as well as links to our videos, the book reports we typically do every day, all this stuff and more. It's all there at ThomHartmann.com. So check it out. And sign up for our newsletter. I think you'll really enjoy it and appreciate it and find a lot of value there. We put a lot of work into this stuff, and you'll find it all right there on our website at ThomHartmann.com. And be sure to check out the newsletter and sign up for it. It's great.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Welcome back. We're trying to figure out how we should all be responding to another addition to the Democratic lineup, and it's increasingly looking like probably tomorrow or next week, Joe Biden will be also tossing his hat into the ring. So we'll have Beto O'Rourke and Joe Biden, two very popular, high name recognition, quite charismatic, moderate Democratic politicians. Will they push Amy Klobuchar and other, quote, moderates out of the middle? Or, how's this going to affect the whole thing? And, what are your thoughts on this? John in Naperville, California, listening on Chicago's Progressive Talk. Hey, John, what's up?
Hi, Tom. Thank you. Beto is a great speaker. His inspirational tone and cadence is reminiscent of Barack Obama, in my opinion. I supported Beto in his race against Ted Cruz. But I want to speak to the Guardian article that you mentioned by David Sirota.
Sirota, yeah.
In that article, it mentions that in Beto's 6-year tenure in the House, there were 167 votes that he made against his own party. And these were not, progressive protest votes. These were votes with Republicans. And just a couple examples here. He voted down Democratic legislation that prevented offshore drilling in the eastern Gulf of Mexico. In 2014 and 2018, he voted for weakening the Volcker Rule, which the Volcker Rule
protects us from big banks. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. It prevents big banks from using customer deposits for speculative trading.
Yep.
It looks like he also voted against financial privacy laws that would protect non-public personal information from being given to third-party customers.
Yeah. No, I've read the article. I know David Sirota, and I'm familiar with the list. And the question in my mind is, did he vote that way when he was in the House because he was part of the New Democrat Coalition, which is a largely corporate money and fueled group? Or did he vote that way because those specific industries were funding him? And when he decided to run for Senate from Texas and not take any corporate money, was that a moment of a conversion or not? And I don't know the answer to that question, John. Do you?
Unfortunately, I don't. But I am looking forward to possibly Beto Town Hall. I think,
because
Beto gets more specific,
and I hope that
we're going to learn a lot.
Right, and I hope that somebody actually asks him the question. Do you want to repudiate all or part of those votes that you took in support of the Republicans and in opposition to the Democrats back when you were in the House of Representatives. John, thanks.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
I am at this point willing to cut everybody a whole lot of slack and hope for the best and actually, you know, trust people if they say, I've changed or I've woken up. Beto O'Rourke came out and said he's going to be running for president, or he is running for president. We now have a growing and extraordinary field of candidates. And unlike the Republican primaries, 4 years ago now, essentially, is when it all kicked off, we are lacking the hustlers and con men that the Republicans had. I mean, they literally had people on stage who, weren't seriously running for president. They were running to raise their profile. They were running to sell more books. They were running, the scam that the Republicans do. I mean, they're in it for the money. Donald Trump, in fact, was in it for the money. He didn't expect to become president. He didn't even really want to be the Republican nominee. He just wanted to build Trump Tower in Moscow and keep it going in Turkey and keep it going in Panama, Panama City, and just keep all his little scams running. And, it didn't quite work out that way, tragically. But the cool thing is that now on the Democratic side, we've got a solid field, and it's growing. In all probability, Joe Biden's going to jump in this week or next, too. And that's like good news. The bad news is that, watching these announcements about Beto this morning on network TV and going back and forth between CNN and MSNBC, immediately the question that's being asked is he too liberal? It's like, really? This is what's so great about Free Speech TV. And it's why you need to call right now, 877-378-8669, and say, yeah, I want to give, $20 a month for forever. Just sign me up. Because I want to be part of Free Speech TV and make it happen. Because here on Free Speech TV, you're going to hear honest, clear, articulate discussions. I mean, with like laying out the individual pieces of the plans. Like the ways Bones articulate, it's just saying, here it is, right? Here's what's going on. Without we need independent media. We really do. And the fact that you're watching right now is proof of that. So 2 things I'd ask of you. Number 1, won't cost you a penny. Seriously. Please make a commitment to yourself that over the course of this week and this weekend, the next 4 days, that you're going to reach out successfully to at least one person to introduce them to Free Speech TV. Now, you may have to talk to 4 or 5 people about Free Speech TV to get that one person to actually turn it on and watch for a few hours and then come back and have a conversation with you about it. But that would be an incredible thing. If even half of the people watching Free Speech TV did that, we would grow our audience by half again, right? And then these fund drives wouldn't need to be as long. And number 2, make a contribution and make it a recurring contribution. Because for every person who signs up to be a sustaining member, a member who's going to be giving every single month no matter what, that's one less person that we need to beg for money from during these fund drives, these kind of time-delimited fund drives. And eventually we can get to the point where they don't need to be as long and they don't need to be as frantic, and, we've got a solid base of support. So those 2 things are, like, for today at the top of my list, because we only have 2 days left, today and tomorrow, for this fund drive. This is the last chance, right? Today and tomorrow, the last chance to exercise your opinion, as it were, to say, yes, I support Free Speech TV. I am calling 877-378-8669 right now. With a $20 gift, you get the Free Speech TV flag lapel pin or the Jesus Was a Socialist bumper sticker, your choice. With a $60 gift, you get the Free Speech TV set of six stickers. I don't want to try and say that fast 3 times. With a $72 gift, you get an autographed copy of my new book, The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment, which we're actually this afternoon starting to record the audiobook edition of, but you'll get the actual physical book edition of it, which will be available in May. With a $100 gift, you get the Free Speech TV t-shirt. With a $200 gift, you get the Free Speech TV hoodie. With a $360 gift, you get all of the above. With a $500 gift, you can attend our webinar on dealing with, this is not so much healing from, but dealing with trauma, stress, anxiety, things like that. And with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland and hang out here for the last hour of the show, and I'll take you to lunch. But all of that is, that's all great stuff. But the most important thing is do something, whether it's talking to friends and neighbors about Free Speech TV, or whether it's calling right now, 877-378-8669. But this is your tag, your it moment. We need your help. We really and truly do. 877-378-8669. We're still way behind our financial goals. So please call now and make whatever contribution you can.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Boy, I just read something that sent chills through my body. I want to share this with you. Recall how Michael Cohen said that he knows Donald Trump. He's worked with him and for him for 10 years, had an office right down the hall from his. He was a senior executive in the Trump organization. And he said if Trump loses in 2020, it's not going to be a peaceful transition of power. So with that in mind, listen to this quote from an interview that Donald Trump gave to Breitbart that was published today. Quote, this is Donald Trump speaking to Breitbart, Steve Bannon's publication. Quote, I have the support of the police. I have the support of the military. I have the support of the bikers for Trump. I have the tough people. But they don't play it tough until they go to a certain point, and then it would be very, very bad. Back in November, he said, they're tough guys, right? Where's the bikers for Trump? Where are the police? Where are the military? Where's ICE? Where are the Border Patrol? We've taken a lot. We've taken a lot, folks. I raised the specter. Do you think that Donald Trump will call out the bikers and the ICE guys and the Sheriff Max sheriffs and the armed white supremacists and tell them to surround the White House if he loses the election in 2020, to hold power, to take down Congress? Would it be the beginning of a civil war? It seemed bizarre when I said it. And here is Donald Trump basically saying, this is my plan. This is damn scary stuff. Nora in Sandy, Oregon. Hey, Nora, what's up?
Well, I'm terrified. Do we all buy guns? That's scary. I think the left is underarmed, if that's the case.
Yeah, you could make that argument.
Yeah, let's not talk about that, though, right now. Yeah. I think passing a purity test at this point is a problem. We don't want, to turn any candidates away, but we do want to look at their, history, and if they say they've changed, how do we believe them is the real problem. Tulsi Gabbard says she's changed her opinion. Beto may say he's changed, or
Kamala Harris on the aggressive way she was prosecuting, small crimes. She's
right,
not.
But do we trust them? Because, like the whole wishy-washy, we're not going to go for Medicare for all, there are lots of other ways. Well, that could be true. There are lots of ways. We don't want to just nail down one concept. No one's got it together yet about that. But to just say that and pay lip service, it seems like everybody has Bernie's platform now, right, from 2016. Yeah. It's like, bandwagon? So which ones are real? Who can we trust? Now, Trump had Bernie's platform, and he won with it.
You're right.
People believed him. He was lying. So really, the key is who's not lying. And I'm betting on the old guy myself because I think he's not a liar, and that's what I can trust.
The old guy being Bernie,
not
not Joe, I'm assuming.
No, Joe's got a terrible history.
Okay.
He's a terrible history. I loved Joe before I became awake. I love Joe, and then I was like, oh yeah, the pawing and the I can't even watch the, we believe you, Anita. I was there. I know the Coke can. We believe you. I had no idea Biden had to do with that. I was in the dark.
Yeah.
So, who can I trust?
And it's going to haunt him.
And
But I think that there, and again, maybe I'm being naive about this. This was the argument I made on behalf of Hillary Clinton once Bernie lost the primary and said, hey, if you supported me, please throw all your support behind Hillary. And I did. And aggressively supported her candidacy.
Him.
And yeah, and
he did a good job. I disagree with everyone who says that he was a sheepdog and he dropped his platform and everything. No, and he was doing the point at all times.
Yeah, and the point that I made, and we'll never know if it's the case or not, because Hillary Clinton didn't become president, even though she won by 3 million votes. And had it not been for voter suppression and crimes on the part of the Republican Party, she definitely would be president. But my hope was that even with her, kind of corporatist moderate past, that she would rise to the occasion. That this metaphor that I've been throwing out here for 15 years, that politicians typically don't start out leading a parade. Now, Bernie's the exception to that, but he's been leading that parade for 40, 50 years, and finally, the country caught up with him. But typically what politicians do is instead of leading a parade, they look for a parade, and when they see a big enough parade, one that they think has a big enough challenge, a big enough, constituency that it can carry them into office, they jump in front of that parade, hoist a flag in the air, and say, this is my parade, and they adopt those positions. And we were seeing Hillary Clinton go through that in the campaign, and frankly, that's what Franklin Roosevelt did in 1933. He ran in November of 32, on a campaign of balancing the budget, right? That was his big thing. He was going to balance the budget. And he got into office. He said, to hell with the budget. We're going to put America back together, because he rose to the occasion. He rose to the crisis. And so, I'm willing to cut a Democratic politician a lot of slack, in part because I trust the Democratic electorate to push people in the right direction. But that said, I also would love to hear them say the right things. Nora, I got to move along, but thank you for the call. Well said. Will in Santa Barbara. Hey, Will, what's up?
Hey, Tom. Thank you for your show. I love it.
Thanks.
And I'm a 3-time Iraq war veteran, raised in a strong Democratic family, and I'm going to tell you why I will not vote for Beto or any other so-called centrist Democrat. What I call fake Democrats, might not like that term, but first of all, Beto said, I'm born to do this. That smacks of arrogance to me. We already have an arrogant person in the White House. I will take not me, us over I was born to do this.
Which is not me, us is Bernie's campaign slogan now, isn't it?
That's correct.
Yeah, okay.
Second thing I'd like to say is Beto has taken too much oil money. I don't trust him to end the war machine. He is a centrist, and what I mean by that is he's the center of the war machine. Only one other congressperson took more money from oil from something I saw recently. I think if we have Beto in there, he's going to be a rubber stamp for whatever oil war that the establishment wants to wage, just like Obama was, just like Trump is, just like Hillary would have been. We need someone who's going to address the fact that we're acting like an oil company with an army, not a country. That is the land of the free, promoting the general welfare and the common defense.
Well, these are the areas, Will. Beto has some pretty nasty votes in his past. So does Joe Biden. I mean, Joe Biden kind of authored the legislation that makes it impossible for young people to discharge student loans in bankruptcy. And, and Kamala Harris has done some things. And Bernie's had some positions on the F-35 and on guns. In every case, if these Democratic politicians will come out and specifically repudiate their past votes, and Joe Biden has done a lot of that now so far, and so has Kamala Harris, and I'm not sure about Bernie with the F-35s, but I think so. Then I'm willing to trust them and go forward, even though I've been burned before by Democratic politicians. I think the stakes are so high, number one, and number two, I think the American electorate is awake this time. and we're not going to let anybody pull a Bill Clinton again.
Okay, well, I'll take Bernie's vote against the Iraq War over all that.
Yeah.
And
I get that. And I
just don't think you can fairly compare what Bernie has voted. What does he have, like a C or a D rating with the NRA from like 20, 30 years ago when they weren't so crazy? He voted with them a few times.
No, he had an A rating with the NRA, but that's mostly because gun control has never been an issue in Vermont. Vermont is one of the most liberal states with regard to guns. I mean, and I mean liberal in the not in the political sense.
I just can't conflate the gun issue. I can't conflate the gun issue with our endless war state. I think they're so different.
No, I get it. And Will, as a veteran, I really, really respect your opinion. You speak with a base of knowledge that I lack and that most Americans lack. And I think it's something that we all need to listen to. Will, I need to move along, but thank you for the call. I appreciate it, too. Back at you. Barbara in Sun City, Arizona. Hey, Barbara, what's on your mind?
Hey, I just want to point out a few things very quickly. The speech by John F. Kennedy to the Liberal Party in 1960, paragraphs 9 and 10, not just the sensational thing he said, and the one line out of paragraph 9 at the end, and that government is an art and has a precious obligation when it has a job to do. I believe it should do it, and this requires not only great ends, but that we propose concrete means of achieving them. So though that speech, I think, is one of the most important. He wasn't president yet.
Right.
And that whole speech needs to be read by every Democrat in the country.
Well, then let me, Barbara, share part of that speech with you right now.
What do our opponents mean when they apply to us the label liberal? If by liberal they mean, as they want people to believe, someone who is soft in his policies abroad, who is against local government, and who is unconcerned with the taxpayer's dollar, then the record of this party and its members demonstrate that we are not that kind of liberal. But if by a liberal they mean someone who looks ahead and not behind, someone who welcomes new ideas without rigid reactions, someone who cares about the welfare of the people, their health, their housing, their schools, their jobs, their civil rights and their civil liberties, someone who believes that we can break through the stalemate and suspicions that grip us in our policies abroad. If that is what they mean by a liberal, then I'm proud to say that I'm a liberal.
And I'm proud to say that I'm a liberal. I'm going to own these policies, said John Kennedy when he was running for president in 1960. That's what I'm looking for. We'll be back. It's 45 minutes past the hour.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
And in about 4 minutes, we'll be checking in with Bob Ney with Talk Media News to find out what the latest news of the day is. Stick around. And welcome back. Tim in Beaverton, Oregon. Hey, Tim, what's on your mind today?
Yeah, pretty interesting program today. That little diatribe you gave on the current Trump philosophy. Scary stuff.
Yeah.
Every time that man opens his mouth, it's like screaming fire in a crowded theater, and people don't realize the significance of it. It's really scary. And then what this whole situation with all the Democrats running, what they all need to do right now, because all they talk about every day is their colleagues and bipartisanship. Elizabeth Warren, Sanders, Beto O'Rourke, they all need to get together right now and do some traveling across this country to college campuses, high schools, women's organizations, Planned Parenthood clinics, and let people know what's going on. And then they have to get a voter registration drive, because right now what the Republicans are doing right now, they're planning for some more voter fraud,
voter suppression. Yeah, no, they're not just planning it; they're actively doing it. They are purging voting lists as fast as just as fast as their computers can run. Tim, excellent point. Excellent point. Thank you for making it. Joy in Thompsonville, Illinois. Hey, Joy, what's up?
Hello, Tom. I've called here before, and I give money, and I watch you every day, and I seem to get always a hesitancy about your feelings about Bernie, and I love Bernie and I trust him. And who was the first person nationwide in 2016 that said the number one concern was climate change, and they laughed at him?
All right, and that was
and
Bernie in the debate.
Our number one concern.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think Bernie's a great candidate. I think he'd make a great president.
Beto is. We do not have the time to elect a moderate this time. No moderate, no corporate. Kamala's a corporate. So many of them take corporate money, and if they took it in the past, they'll take it again.
Yeah.
We just don't have time because of climate change.
I think that you make a very good point, Joy. And but interestingly, climate change was the thing that Beto kicked off with this morning. So if he's willing to repudiate his fossil fuel past, to the extent that there is one, and again, I'm no Beto expert. I'd love to know more about this.
Yes, he's a mystery right now, and I know the real stuff. And if you're going to rely on the people, we love Bernie, and that's how it is.
Yeah, there you go. Joy, thank you for the call. Marta in Big Bear Lake. Hey, Marta, you got a minute to the break. What's up?
I agree with Jim Hightower. There's nothing in the middle of the road but dead armadillos.
And yellow stripes.
Pardon me?
There's nothing, the only thing in the middle of the road are dead armadillos and yellow stripes.
Exactly. Medicare buy-in is horrible. Just look at Medicare for seniors. It's putting them in poverty. They can't afford the premiums and their medications. Going back to college myself, I see students having to work for low wages. Rents are spiraling. Tuitions are spiraling. They can't afford, the Obamacare, and they maybe make too much for Medi-Cal. And,
so your point, Marta, because we're going to hit the break here.
Okay, we need a champion in mid-30s.
We need a chance. I'm sorry. Can you turn her up a little bit, Sean? We need a chance.
Champion. We need a champion.
Oh, we need a champion. Yeah, real progressives. Okay, spot on. I agree. Marta, thank you for the call. We'll be back. Bob Ney is going to inform us about what's going on in the world in just a moment. Stick around. Hey, over at ThomHartmann.com, we've got some really cool stuff. A lot of people don't realize that we produce a daily newsletter, and Sue puts we call it Sue's Daily Stack on there, which is literally a link to every story that I've talked about in the show. So all the research is right there. It's free. We don't share or sell our subscriber list. It's there's just it's there. It's there for you. And it's over at ThomHartmann.com. You can sign up for the free newsletter. You also can get my big picture take of the day, which is exclusively over at our website at ThomHartmann.com, as well as links to our videos, the book reports we typically do every day, all this stuff and more. It's all there at ThomHartmann.com. So check it out and sign up for our newsletter. I think you'll really enjoy it and appreciate it and find a lot of value there. We put a lot of work into this stuff. And you'll find it all right there on our website at ThomHartmann.com. And be sure to check out the newsletter and sign up for it. It's great.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
So let's check in with Talk Media News and find out what's going on in the world today. This report brought to you by GoatsForTheOldGoat.com and Ellen Ratner's new book, Loving What You Do. On the line with us is former Ohio Congressman and author of the book Sideswiped about his years in Washington, D.C., Bob Ney. Bob, welcome back to the program.
Well, thank you, Tom.
What's up today? I noticed that that there was a unanimous a bill passed the House of Representatives unanimously. I think it was this morning. Tell us about this.
Right. Well, there's several things. Of course, the rebuke of the president by the U.S. Senate. Enough Republicans provided, votes to do that.
Now, that was on the war against Yemen, right? And Saudi Arabia?
Yes. Well, it's the rebuke with the wall. We've got three things, actually.
First the wall. Yeah, the wall. Yemen thing is coming.
So we know Mexico's not building it now, and we know that the Senate's not supporting it, at least a few people. Republican-wise, added to the Democratic votes, and so that's the other thing. And then the Yemen rebuke, and I call it a rebuke because the president continues still, I believe, due to, and so many other people on the Hill believe, due to the relationship of his son-in-law and MBS, Mohammed bin Salman. And it's making it very clear the heat's on to not support Saudi Arabia in this proxy war against Iran in Yemen.
But the Kushner family needs the money from the Middle East, and maybe the Trump family does too.
Well, I think that you're going to see, as you know, the U.S. House is going to take exactly that angle because of the constant support of MBS, which has went far beyond anything that anybody would have done in a regular situation. So they want to look into that, and also his father-in-law, because of the outright interest to get loans from Qatar and different Mideast countries, and then of course the influence of the White House. And they're going to look at that, in the investigation. And then the big deal too was the huge vote. 190 Republicans sided with the unanimous vote of the Democratic side to say that the Mueller report needs to be released.
That's correct.
And that actually shocked me, that many votes going for it.
I was surprised on the one hand. On the other hand, it's a resolution. It's not a law, so it has no teeth. It has no force. And
but they're on record.
Yeah, but it is putting the Republicans on record that they do want this report public. But, William Barr is the guy who advised George Herbert Walker Bush to pardon Cap Weinberger and Ollie North and what's his name, Elliot Abrams, in order to cover up Iran-Contra. And when he did those pardons, the prosecutor, Robert Walsh, threw up his hands and said, "That's it. I can't go any farther. The investigation's over. This is the best cover-up I've ever seen." That was in 1992. That same guy, William Barr, is now he's now the Attorney General. And when he went through his confirmation hearings, he said, "I'm going to refuse to tell you whether I'm going to show you the Mueller report or not, and I have the authority to withhold it." I mean, so the Congress can pass resolutions all day long, but unless they pass a damn law, it doesn't mean anything.
Right. But they will, and you're totally correct. But they'll get them on record. It's just it's a beginning process of more heat. I really didn't expect that many people, to be frank with you, to vote.
Yeah, I think there were like 6 of them who voted present, 6 Republicans.
And then the big news of the day, in my opinion, having sat through a Congress that had a impeachment in the House, not a conviction in the Senate based on a perjury issue. You look at history, quote, repeating itself. The New York Appellate Court has ruled President Trump has to face Summer Zervis because he slandered her and called her a liar, and she's has sexual allegations against him. Well, they based it on the court decision of Jones versus Clinton.
Yeah, exactly. This is the exact same thing that Paula Jones. Well, it's not the exact same thing, but it's very close to a Paula Jones. It was a civil lawsuit against Bill Clinton, and they said, "Hey, you're not trying to put him in jail. You're just trying to get some money out of him. He can deal with that. He's got lawyers."
Right, and that led to the fact he had to be deposed because, as I explained to people, they can prove that President Trump lies 95% of the time. They can prove it, but it doesn't matter in the legal realm. It matters in the personal realm, but doesn't matter in the legal realm until he gets deposed. Right. And this is the one case, Tom, that if this winds through and he goes under a deposition, how would the Republicans who had supported going after Bill Clinton because of perjury, how would they not be on record to go after, President?
Right. Bill Clinton lied in a deposition in the Paula Jones case. Well, actually, it later became the Monica Lewinsky case, saying, I didn't have sex with that woman, but that was not a criminal investigation. You're right. That was a civil investigation.
And lying on television, if they put political people in jail for lying on TV, they'd have to build a couple more. So it's just a matter when you get under the deposition. Right.
So what else is up, Bob?
Well, I don't know if you've talked about the FDA ruling. It's nibbling around the edges, as they say, but it didn't take a bite. But they're coming out with some ruling on the vape, and it'll have to be behind a counter, not accessible to teens. It'll have to follow a lot of the rules, the vaping issue. Yeah. But a lot of the advocacy groups wanted the flavoring to be done away with. Yeah, and ironically, they're talking about doing away with menthol, but they're not going to the step to do away with the flavoring for the vape
This is this generation's Joe Camel. This is this generation's attempt by the tobacco industry to addict kids before they turn 18. That because they know that if you get addicted to nicotine before you're 20, roughly, your odds, it's literally 5 times more difficult to quit as an adult. Because it alters the way that your brain develops, and the brain continues developing until we're around 23 years old. And tobacco companies know that. This is just so wrong. Bob, thanks a lot for the call. It's great to talk to you. Oop, I just dropped Bob. Bob, thank you so much. We'll be back. That was Bob Ney with Talk Media News. We'll be back. Stick around.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
We say fight back!
Beto O'Rourke came out and said he's going to be running for president, or he is running for president. We now have a growing and extraordinary field of candidates. And unlike the Republican primaries, 4 years ago now, essentially, is when it all kicked off, we are lacking the hustlers and con men that the Republicans had. I mean, they literally had people on stage who, weren't seriously running for president. They were running to raise their profile. They were running to sell more books. They were running, the scam that the Republicans do. I mean, they're in it for the money. Donald Trump, in fact, was in it for the money. He didn't expect to become president. He didn't even really want to be the Republican nominee. He just wanted to build Trump Tower in Moscow and keep it going in Turkey and keep it going in Panama, Panama City, and just keep all his little scams running. And, it didn't quite work out that way, tragically. But the cool thing is that now on the Democratic side, we've got a solid field, and it's growing. In all probability, Joe Biden's going to jump in this week or next, too. And that's like good news. The bad news is that, watching these announcements about Beto this morning on network TV and going back and forth between CNN and MSNBC, immediately the question that's being asked is he too liberal? It's like, really? This is what's so great about Free Speech TV. And it's why you need to call right now, 877-378-8669, and say, yeah, I want to give, $20 a month for forever. Just sign me up. Because I want to be part of Free Speech TV and make it happen. Because here on Free Speech TV, you're going to hear honest, clear, articulate discussions. I mean, with like laying out the individual pieces of the plans. Like the ways Bones articulate, it's just saying, here it is, right? Here's what's going on. Without we need independent media. We really do. And the fact that you're watching right now is proof of that. So 2 things I'd ask of you. Number 1, won't cost you a penny. Seriously. Please make a commitment to yourself that over the course of this week and this weekend, the next 4 days, that you're going to reach out successfully to at least one person to introduce them to Free Speech TV. Now, you may have to talk to 4 or 5 people about Free Speech TV to get that one person to actually turn it on and watch for a few hours and then come back and have a conversation with you about it. But that would be an incredible thing if even half of the people watching Free Speech TV did that, we would grow our audience by half again, right? And then these fund drives wouldn't need to be as long. And number two, make a contribution and make it a recurring contribution. Because for every person who signs up to be a sustaining member, a member who's going to be giving every single month no matter what, that's one less person that we need to beg for money from during these fund drives, these kind of time-delimited fund drives. And eventually we can get to the point where they don't need to be as long and they don't need to be as frantic, and, you know, we've got a solid base of support. So those two things are, like, for today, at the top of my list, because we only have 2 days left, today and tomorrow, for this fund drive. This is the last chance, right? Today and tomorrow, the last chance to exercise your opinion, as it were, to say, yes, I support Free Speech TV. I am calling 877-378-8669 right now. With a $20 gift, you get the Free Speech TV flag lapel pin or the Jesus Was a Socialist bumper sticker, your choice. With a $60 gift, you get the Free Speech TV set of six stickers. I don't want to try and say that fast 3 times. With a $72 gift, you get an autographed copy of my new book, The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment, which we're actually this afternoon starting to record the audiobook edition of, but you'll get the actual physical book edition of it, which will be available in May. With a $100 gift, you get the Free Speech TV t-shirt. With a $200 gift, you get the Free Speech TV hoodie. With a $360 gift, you get all of the above. With a $500 gift, you can attend our webinar on dealing with, this is not so much healing from, but dealing with trauma, stress, anxiety, things like that. And with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland and hang out here for the last hour of the show, and I'll take you to lunch. But all of that is, you know, that's all great stuff. But the most important thing is do something, whether it's talking to friends and neighbors about Free Speech TV, or whether it's calling right now, 877-378-8669. But this is your tag, your it moment. We need your help. We really and truly do. 877-378-8669. We're still way behind our financial goals. So please call now and make whatever contribution you can. Hey, over at ThomHartmann.com, we've got some really cool stuff. A lot of people don't realize that we produce a daily newsletter. And Sue puts we call it Sue's Daily Stack on there, which is literally a link to every story that I've talked about in the show. So all the research is right there. It's free. We don't share or sell our subscriber list. It's, you know, there's just, it's there. It's there for you. And it's over at ThomHartmann.com. You can sign up for the free newsletter. You also can get my big picture take of the day, which is exclusively over at our website at ThomHartmann.com, as well as links to our videos, the book reports we typically do every day, all this stuff and more. It's all there at ThomHartmann.com. So check it out and sign up for our newsletter. I think you'll really enjoy it and appreciate it and find a lot of value there. We put a lot of work into this stuff. And you'll find it all right there on our website at ThomHartmann.com. And be sure to check out the newsletter and sign up for it. It's great.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And welcome back. 6 minutes past the hour. At our first hour, we were talking about Beto O'Rourke and his rolling out his presidential campaign today. He's now officially a candidate for President of the United States. And people have been weighing in on their thoughts on that. In our second hour, Dr. Wolf dropped by, Professor Richard Wolf, and we were talking about how do empires end? And is the American empire in the process of ending? And if so, does it get really messy? Meanwhile, Donald Trump has said that he's got the ICE police officers with him. We know that he's got the sheriffs, many of the sheriffs with him. We had Sheriff Mack on this program talking about how they would stand up for Donald Trump over the law. essentially. He said he's got the bikers with him. I mean, you know, this is pretty weird stuff. We'll get into a conversation of that a little later on today. And in fact, I want to put it front and center tomorrow as well. And the, you know, basically the entire Republican, essentially, you know, war on all the rest of us. You know, will Social Security, for example, be expanded? Donald Trump is proposing to cut Social Security in his budget. He is proposing, you know, he's the guy who said every Republican on this stage is going to tell you that they're going to protect Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. I'm the only one who actually will do it. They all want to cut it. Well, he wants to cut all three: Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. On the line with us is Richard R.J. Eskow, Senior Fellow at the Campaign for America's Future, host of the Zero Hour on React Radio and now on Free Speech TV, ourfuture.org, and this is thezerohour.com, or the websites. You can tweet him at R.J. Eskow. Richard, welcome back to the program.
Great to be back, Tom.
So give us the details on exactly what's going on with regard to Social Security. I know that there's activity in the House of Representatives. There is, of course, Donald Trump's budget. I don't know if any Republicans have gone on record saying that they support his plan to cut Social Security. I'd be surprised if they hadn't. So where are we at? What's actually going on? What are the details?
Well, to me, Tom, it's one of the most interesting times for Social Security in many years in a way, because we're back to a very stark difference between the two parties in a way we haven't seen in a generation, in my opinion. We have Trump now joining with Republican orthodoxy, basically, by proposing major cuts to Social Security as well as to Medicaid and Medicare. And both Medicaid and Medicare contribute to the retirement security or disability security of people who receive Social Security, because Medicaid pays roughly 65% of all nursing home costs, for example. So it's very important in the lives of seniors, and Medicare, of course, being critically important to seniors. So we have the typical, in addition to the budget cuts to Social Security itself, we have Trump falling in line with the standard GOP assault on retirement security and the security of disabled people in this country. But on the flip side, we have something we haven't seen in a generation, which is legitimate hearings in the House, in this case, the Social Security Subcommittee, on expanding Social Security. We have a couple proposals to do that. The recent hearings were on Representative John Larson's proposal to expand Social Security benefits. Now, it's not the most left of the proposals out there, but it's got enormous support, and it does increase benefits. It's got more than 200 co-sponsors, meaning it's well on the way to passage before it even gets put up for a vote. And the hearings today, to me, it was, as much as anything else, the crossing of a symbolic barrier, because as far as I know, it hasn't been since Social Security was expanded in several ways in the 1950s that we've had the House of Representatives actually holding serious hearings about expanding Social Security. And as you know, that was very much part of the political zeitgeist at the time. You had President Eisenhower, a Republican, boasting in 1956 in the Republican Party platform that Social Security benefits were extended or increased to 10 million people during his first term. So you had a consensus in support of expanding the program then, and I believe what we're going to see is a majority consensus again in favor of expanding Social Security.
Yeah. Meanwhile, with regard to Medicare, and Medicare for all, you know, this whole idea of expanding Medicare into a national health care system like Canada did back in the 1960s. Pramila Jayapal and Bernie Sanders have a very specific bill, hers in the House, his in the Senate. I believe that they're harmonized, correct me if I'm wrong, that would do just that. And now we're starting to see some pushback from this. I noticed one of the Democratic presidential candidates this morning, who announced this morning, Beto O'Rourke, was specifically asked about that in a town hall meeting, and he basically just said he embraces the idea of everybody having access to high-quality health care, which, of course, is what Ronald Reagan ran for re-election on in '84. And then I think the next year he signed that bill that required, that made it illegal for emergency rooms to turn people away if they couldn't pay. And then the Republicans ever since have said, well, everybody has access to health care in America. What's going on here with this, Richard?
You know, Tom, I listened with great interest to your first hour, your discussion about Beto and about Nancy Pelosi saying that, values come first, which I think is true. But I think in the case of Medicare for All, it's support for it has almost become an assertion of values as well as support of a specific policy, because, words like access are words that some of us have come to view with a certain concern and healthy skepticism, I think, because access to something you can't afford, for example, isn't really access at all. So I think, we can debate the specifics of the Medicare for All bill put together by Representative Jayapal. I happen to think it's extremely good and extremely strong, but the underlying values behind it are that cost should not be a factor in getting the medical care you need, that if people need care, I've lived through a generation of health policy where it was felt that you created copays and deductibles partially so that employers could pay less to cover their employees, but partially because it was believed it was a kind of social engineering, as if people would just frivolously get care they don't need if those things weren't in place. I don't think people believe that anymore, and I think people are now saying it's a shame when, as was the case with a young teacher recently, someone dies because they don't feel they can afford $160 copayment to buy the prescription medications they need to control a serious flu. Yeah. So I think that's where we're at now, where Medicare. Go ahead.
Well, I was just to wrap this up. Is it? Did I read this right? Is it actually true? Is this actually going on that the Trump administration and the Republicans are proposing that they begin taking the names and identities of people who are on disability or on, any kind of, basically any kind of disability, Social Security disability, and look at their Facebook pages to see if they can find evidence that they're not really disabled? I mean, everybody, no matter how much pain they're in, can pull off 3 seconds of a smile for a picture for Facebook. And everybody knows that the way that people portray themselves on Facebook, is not really their real life and doesn't show their real challenges and difficulties and all these things. We all kind of put our best face forward, our best foot forward. Is this, are we looking at a situation here where large chunks of people who are on disability might suddenly find themselves having to go to court to defend their disability claims because they posted some pictures on Facebook 5 years ago?
Potentially, and at the same time that the Trump administration wants to cut the administrative budget so that there's nobody there to hear their case. They could have their benefits cut off. And it's another way, it's a very draconian 1984 way of demonizing the people who, these benefits are supposed to be here when we need them. And yet this is another way for Republicans, including Trump, to demonize people who do need them and make them seem like the other. And isn't it funny that the Republicans who always complain about intrusive government want to impose such a kind of police state activity on our private lives? Yeah, it goes beyond funny. I think it's obscene. R.J. Eskow, senior fellow with the Campaign for America's Future, host of the Zero Hour on WEAC Radio in D.C. and now on Free Speech TV, ourfuture.org, and this is thezerohour.com are the websites. You can tweet him at R.J. Eskow, E-S-K-O-W. Richard, thanks for dropping by. Always a pleasure, Tom. Always a pleasure talking with you, too. We'll be back with more of the news of the day and your calls right after this. Stick around. It's 15 minutes and change past the hour.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
So what do you think about Beto's candidacy? What do you think about the Democratic field right now? I'm encouraged and enthusiastic. And welcome back. Denise in Calumet, Michigan. Hey, Denise, thanks for watching us on Free Speech TV. What's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom, and thank you for taking my call. I also want to let you know that I believe everybody that listens should sustain your Free Speech TV and contribute as I do. The thing about Beto O'Rourke isn't anything specifically about Beto O'Rourke. Trump is never going to get his real wall but he has a Republican wall right now. And we need somebody strong enough to clean up Trump's mess, somebody who has the courage and has been out there with the courage to stand up to that Republican wall of people who have given up on their oath to the Constitution and have followed Trump loyally in all his lies. So I'm going for Bernie. I'll go for anybody that gets elected to the Democratic primary, but I really believe Bernie has the guts, or Elizabeth has the guts, to stand up to that Republican wall.
Yeah, I have said I'm not endorsing, but that said, the two clear progressive front runners in my mind are Bernie and Elizabeth Warren, and then there's some other great candidates, and I share your sentiment. Denise, thank you very much for the call. Michael in Princeton, Minnesota. Hey, Michael, thanks for watching Free Speech. What's up?
Yeah, quickly, what you were talking about, Mr. Esco, about Workman's Comp already uses Facebook to stop people from drawing.
Really?
Yeah. They did it in the state of Minnesota.
Oh, my.
A woman went on and posted something about her doing her garden, and she was on Workman's Comp, and the next thing you knew, they called her back to work and put her on light duty and took her off the Workman's Comp and stuff. Yeah, so they can do that.
Wow. Well, go ahead.
We're talking about the horse race of the candidates for presidency, but I do believe that Donald Trump is really doing us a big benefit. We brought out the progressives, for the House. If we can do that for the Senate now and then get any Democratic president, I can't see that a Democratic president would veto anything that came through both houses of Congress.
Yeah.
And if they're progressive enough, they can push the president.
Yeah, I agree. And so can the people. And, the old parade thing. And this is why we need to get on this. I'm with you. Michael, thank you. Well said. Brian in Tacoma, Washington. Hey, Brian, thanks for listening to KBCS. What's up?
Hi, thanks for being there to listen to. You do a lot of great things. But I just, and I think you do say this a lot, and I think I believe this, but I feel like, oh, God, here we go again with the Bernie folks. And I love a lot of things that Bernie does. And if he had been the Democratic nominee, I 100% would have voted for him, really support him. But I really hope that in the next 18 months or whatever, you can, as often as possible, say to the Bernie folks, okay, do everything you possibly can to get your guy in there. But if he is not the nominee, then it's not Bernie or bust, because at that point we will be Trump.
Brian, there's nobody out there saying Bernie or bust. I have not one single person has called into this program in a year and said that.
Last time around, that's how it went.
Yeah, occasionally I'll see somebody come on to my Twitter feed and say that, and then when I look at them, they've got like 700 tweets and 2 followers, and that's just a bot. This whole thing of Bernie bros and Bernie or bust, it's over. Bernie's one of the candidates. We'll see who wins, and we'll all support who wins. Period. Hey, over at ThomHartmann.com, we've got some really cool stuff. A lot of people don't realize that we produce a daily newsletter, and Sue puts we call it Sue's Daily Stack on there, which is literally a link to every story that I've talked about in the show. So all the research is right there. It's free. We don't share or sell our subscriber list. It's it's there. It's there for you. And it's over at ThomHartmann.com. You can sign up for the free newsletter. You also can get my big picture take of the day, which is exclusively over at our website at ThomHartmann.com, as well as links to our videos, the book reports we typically do every day, all this stuff and more. It's all there at ThomHartmann.com. So check it out and sign up for our newsletter. I think you'll really enjoy it and appreciate it and find a lot of value there. We put a lot of work into this stuff. And you'll find it all right there on our website at ThomHartmann.com. And be sure to check out the newsletter and sign up for it. It's great.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
welcome back. Tanner in Madison, Wisconsin. Your thoughts, Tanner, on all this stuff here?
Yeah, I think if you had asked me 3 months ago whether Trump would be reelected, I would have said no. But the Democrats are just, you got to run somebody in the middle. I know it seems counterintuitive.
Oh, really? Are you a Republican consultant, Tanner?
I've been a Democrat my whole life. You guys are a little wacky with some of the identity politics and everything, but I don't know what to say. Like, Trump must be sitting back, and he can't believe.
We ran a centrist candidate 3 years ago, and she got her butt kicked by Donald Trump in the Electoral College. I realize she got.
I would recommend not running somebody that detestable and unlikable. But if you run somebody who's halfway reasonable, Trump's base is eroding. There's a huge opportunity for a working class kind of oriented, economically minded Democrat.
Let me just be very clear about something, Tanner, before we go any farther in this conversation. Just stop for a minute. Let me just be very clear about this.
Yeah.
If a centrist, if Joe Biden, Beto O'Rourke, whatever, if Amy Klobuchar, if any of those people become the nominee of the Democratic Party, if the Democrats in mass in primaries and in the caucuses decide that who our candidate is, I believe that person can beat Trump. I believe that pretty much any Democrat right now could beat Trump. I believe he's that vulnerable, and he's going to be more vulnerable as more evidence of his crimes come out. But I would like somebody who is going to turn out the Democratic base. My concern is that we're hearing all this advice from these idiots on cable TV, these pundits, who at least half of whom are Republicans, and many of whom are big time, in deep with the corporate part of the old corporate Democratic Party, who are saying that, if you run somebody too far to the left, the American people won't show up. And no, what I believe is that, and I think that the last 15, 20 years with the Republican Party tells us this, is that if you can turn out your base, you don't need votes from the other side. And they keep saying, oh, but you need to get those Republicans, and you need to get those independents who voted for both Obama and Trump. I don't think we need to. I think we need to turn out the Democratic base, period, full stop. Okay, back to you, Tanner.
But I think what they're saying is, places like Milwaukee and Detroit and Philadelphia didn't come out hard enough for Hillary because she's an old, rich white lady. And so I think they're gonna say, yeah, Beto's fine, maybe for a VP, but we really need a Kamala Harris.
Yeah, it could be. I don't think it was old rich white lady. I think it was just an incredibly badly run campaign. I mean, her campaign, I'm with her, really, and not even going to Wisconsin, just taking it for granted. People know when they're being taken for granted. But anyhow, my point is, I don't disagree with you that if a centrist is our nominee, we should all get behind that person and and help them win. But I really believe that if you want to turn out the Democratic base, particularly the minority base, the young base, and the older base of Social Security folks, if you want to turn out that base, and those are the folks who are going to be the most active, the people in the middle who are working, 3 jobs, people in their 30s and 40s and 50s, just desperately trying to hang on by their fingernails. It's going to be a lot harder to even get them to vote regardless of party. But if you want to turn out the base, get a real progressive. That's my opinion, Tanner.
Well, I think so. I think, but look, what happened in the House was those districts, those Democrats, the people that voted for Obama and then voted for Trump and then went back to the Democrats because they had an economic message. But nobody wants to hear that. No, so I think it's a big mistake if you go all in with the culture war stuff.
But the progressive message is an economic message. So.
Well, why did the AFL-CIO come out against the Green New Deal then? Why? When I remember when liberals used to care about unrestricted immigration, and now Cesar Chavez is rolling in his.
There is no Democrat in the United States who's in favor of unrestricted immigration. There's no Democrat in the United States holding political office that I know of who is saying we should have open borders. None. And I don't know that the AFL-CIO is opposed to the Green New Deal. I've not seen any kind of policy position from them on that. Tanner, we're talking in circles here. Maura in Linwood, Washington. Hey, Maura, what's up?
Hi, Tom.
I've followed you since Gore got beat down in Florida.
Thank you. Maura, may I put you back on hold? I'm very sorry, but it just occurred to me that we're going to hit a break here in about 10 seconds, and that's not fair to you. I'd like to hear what you actually have to say rather than listening to you get cut off by the music that's going to cut me off in about 2 seconds here. So we'll be back with more of your thoughts on, you know, the Democratic primary, who the candidates are, and I'd like to toss something into this. Now that Donald Trump has come out and officially said that he's willing to use bikers, white supremacists, gun-carrying white people, ICE officers, renegade sheriffs, God only knows. Now that he's come out and said that these are his people, do you think we're facing a civil war if he loses in 2020?
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
And I mean, this is as serious as a heart attack. This is a serious question here. Trump has just laid down the gauntlet, and I think everybody's ignoring it. Beto O'Rourke came out and said he's going to be running for president, or he is running for president. We now have a growing and extraordinary field of candidates. And unlike the Republican primaries, 4 years ago now, essentially, is when it all kicked off, we are lacking the hustlers and con men that the Republicans had. I mean, they literally had people on stage who, weren't seriously running for president. They were running to raise their profile. They were running to sell more books. They were running, the scam that the Republicans do. I mean, they're in it for the money. Donald Trump, in fact, was in it for the money. He didn't expect to become president. He didn't even really want to be the Republican nominee. He just wanted to build Trump Tower in Moscow and keep it going in Turkey and keep it going in Panama, Panama City, and just keep all his little scams running. And, it didn't quite work out that way, tragically. But the cool thing is that now on the Democratic side, we've got a solid field, and it's growing. In all probability, Joe Biden's going to jump in this week or next, too. And that's like good news. The bad news is that watching these announcements about Beto this morning on network TV and going back and forth between CNN and MSNBC, immediately the question that's being asked is he too liberal? It's like, really? This is what's so great about Free Speech TV. And it's why you need to call right now, 877-378-8669, and say, yeah, I want to give, $20 a month for forever. Just sign me up. Because I want to be part of Free Speech TV and make it happen. Because here on Free Speech TV, you're going to hear honest, clear, articulate discussions. I mean, with like laying out the individual pieces of the plans. Like the ways Bones articulate, it's just saying, here it is, right? Here's what's going on. Without the, we need independent media. We really do. And the fact that you're watching right now is proof of that. So 2 things I'd ask of you. Number 1, won't cost you a penny. Seriously. Please make a commitment to yourself that over the course of this week and this weekend, the next 4 days, that you're going to reach out successfully to at least one person to introduce them to Free Speech TV. Now, you may have to talk to 4 or 5 people about Free Speech TV to get that one person to actually turn it on and watch for a few hours and then come back and have a conversation with you about it. But that would be an incredible thing. If even half of the people watching Free Speech TV did that, we would grow our audience by half again, right? And then these fund drives wouldn't need to be as long. And number 2, make a contribution and make it a recurring contribution. Because for every person who signs up to be a sustaining member, a member who's going to be giving every single month no matter what, that's one less person that we need to beg for money from during these fund drives, these kind of time-delimited fund drives. And eventually we can get to the point where they don't need to be as long and they don't need to be as frantic, and, you know, we've got a solid base of support. So those two things are, like, for today at the top of my list, because we only have 2 days left, today and tomorrow, for this fund drive. This is the last chance, right? Today and tomorrow, the last chance to exercise your opinion, as it were, to say, yes, I support Free Speech TV. I am calling 877-378-8669 right now. With a $20 gift, you get the Free Speech TV flag lapel pin or the Jesus Was a Socialist bumper sticker, your choice. With a $60 gift, you get the Free Speech TV set of six stickers. I don't want to try and say that fast 3 times. With a $72 gift, you get an autographed copy of my new book, The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment, which we're actually this afternoon starting to record the audiobook edition of, but you'll get the actual physical book edition of it, which will be available in May. With a $100 gift, you get the Free Speech TV t-shirt. With a $200 gift, you get the Free Speech TV hoodie. With a $360 gift, you get all of the above. With a $500 gift, you can attend our webinar on dealing with, this is not so much healing from, but dealing with trauma, stress, anxiety, things like that. And with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland and hang out here for the last hour of the show, and I'll take you to lunch. But all of that is, you know, that's all great stuff. But the most important thing is do something, whether it's talking to friends and neighbors about Free Speech TV, or whether it's calling right now, 877-378-8669. But this is your tag, your it moment. We need your help. We really and truly do. 877-378-8669. We're still way behind our financial goals. So please call now and make whatever contribution you can.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
It's Talk Radio for the sane among us. Thom Hartmann back here with you. You know, one other thing I want to toss into this, and what got me thinking about this morning was listening to Beto O'Rourke talk about climate change, and he gave a very passionate riff about how, you know, his son, who I think is like 11 or 12 years old, is going to be his age in 2050, and, you know, the climate change will have really hit the fan by then. I mean, it is now, right? And what we're seeing right now is that this refugee crisis in the Middle East and these wars from Syria to Libya to Tunisia, I mean, right, the military coup in Egypt, all of this stuff is being driven by climate change. This was the thing about the Arab Spring. We thought the Arab Spring was originally because Barack Obama gave a great speech in Egypt about the importance of democracy, and then some guy in Tunisia sets himself on fire. And, you know, and then boom, it's the Arab Spring, it's democracy spreading across Northern Africa and the Middle East. No, it turns out actually what was going on was that climate change had wiped out millions of acres of farmland. The desert was moving south into North Africa and, you know, from Syria and the Middle East, from Syria all the way across Libya and all the way, you know, to Sudan and everything else. And so all of these farmers had become climate refugees, and they and their families were streaming into the big cities, whether it was Damascus or Tripoli or whatever it may be. And at the same time, because there was less food being produced, the price of food was going up. And that's what that young man lit himself on fire in protest of, was the rising price of wheat. People couldn't afford food. And they couldn't afford food because of climate change. And what has our response been to that? We're bombing the crap out of a half a dozen countries in that area. We're literally taking Yemen and well, actually several different countries, but particularly Yemen and also Syria back to the Stone Age. I mean, we're turning their cities into rubble. Not to mention radicalizing their young people. They're going to hate the United States forever, for generations. We've got to come up with a better way to deal with this. The United States Senate just voted to say no to Jared Kushner and Mohammed bin Salman's little war in Yemen. The U.S. Senate just said no. That's a good step. But more climate refugees are on their way. This is happening big time. What we have seen so far with the refugee crisis in Europe, the refugee crisis in the Middle East, the refugee crisis, frankly, on our southern border, and a lot of that has to do with climate change because farms in Central America aren't as productive as they used to be. As we look at all of this, we've got to get ready for something really big, and we've got to figure out a way to deal with it that doesn't involve dropping bombs on people, because that not only doesn't work, but over the long term, that's just insanely counterproductive. So anyhow, back to your calls. Maura in Linwood, Washington. Maura, you're the person that I put on hold just before the break, right?
That's right.
Yeah, okay, so what were you saying? My apologies.
Well, I've got a lot I'd like to say. I'm 82 years old. I've lived through very bad times when my parents were talking about FDR and how wonderful he was and how he'd changed their lives. And when the union came, and it changed my father's life at work. They were hardworking people. And they were married on the day before the market crashed. So,
wow.
You know, they went through an awful lot, lived in a chicken house that they papered with, wallpapered with newspapers and, you know, things like that. And we didn't have water accessible to us until I was 5 years old because they had to save enough money to drill a well. And then I've been through the good times, the bad times, and the good times. I remember the late 60s and the 70s and the early 80s when things were just going so beautifully for everybody. My husband made decent money, and my parents were retired, and everything was really a good world. And then along came the Republicans and Ronald Reagan, and he changed the law. I had a son that was mentally ill, and there was no place for him anymore when he was having his bad things happen to him, and he committed suicide. But I'm going on and on and on. But this election, Beto O'Rourke is probably a very fine young man, but I think he needs to win an election. I think he needs to
well, he was 3 terms, 6 years in the House of Representatives from the El Paso area. Yeah.
Okay, so he does know what it's all about.
Oh yeah.
But I've been with you with Bernie and Elizabeth Warren and Joe Biden, and I just don't think you can beat Bernie and Elizabeth. They'd make a wonderful team, and yeah, Bernie's getting up there, but I'm 82 and I'm still going strong, so why couldn't he? You know?
There you go.
And Elizabeth would be there to pick up the pieces if something happened to him. I just, you know, she's such a fighter. I just admire her, and I've been listening to Bernie all those years that he was on your show, and you know, he doesn't change his tune. Yeah. He wants what I had and what my father looked forward to and was so happy about FDR because they changed his life. I've got 3 grandsons that are in their early 20s. They're still living at home because they can't afford to go out and rent an apartment.
Yep. This is Reaganomics. This is what Ronald Reagan brought us. Maura, you said it so well. I thank you so much for the call, and it was just perfect. And in fact, you gave me the perfect setup. Reuben Bowling does a cartoon called Tom the Dancing Bug. And I saw this today on Daily Kos, and I just have to share this with you very quickly. You'll have to do this in your head as a thought thing. There's a young couple, a young man and a young woman. It's mid-1950s. Okay, we're all here. It's like 1955, and they are having a picnic. And he says to his girlfriend, he says, "Sure is great to enjoy the heyday of American capitalism." And then suddenly, there's this bzzz, and a couple of bodies kind of teleport in. And he says, "What's this?" And one of the bodies says, "Ha ha, we are the American socialists from the future, from 2019 AD. And the young man in 1950 says, "Good Lord, we've been warned about the socialists." And then you see Elizabeth Warren is one of them, right? And Elizabeth Warren says, "Yes, being socialists in our time wasn't fun enough, so we've invented a time machine to invade the 1950s. And this poor woman, this young woman from the 1950s, she shrieks, "Oh, no." And then Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez says, scream all you want. We'll introduce a humane and expanded system for refugees to apply for asylum in the United States. And the young man says, well, wait, that's a mainstream value today. Both Democrats and Republicans support that. And then Bernie Sanders, he's one of the socialists from the future who teleported back to 1950. He says, then we will create laws that will lower the top 1%'s share of income below 20% of all American income. And the young man says, but it's currently at about 10%. And then Elizabeth Warren says, and we'll make the top tax rate of capitalism a crushing 70%. And the young woman from the 1950s says, you mean you'll lower the top rate? It's 91% now. And so then Bernie and Alexandria and Elizabeth say, it's boring being an evil socialist in the 1950s. Let's go back to 2019 where we're actually scary. And then the young man says to his girlfriend, he says, they weren't socialists, but they were scary. And she says, I'll say that man was clearly a Jew, and I think that young woman was colored. So, you know, reflecting the values of the 1950s, I guess. But back in the 1950s, it was a whole lot. I mean, you know, it's like the things that are being proposed right now, where you see these idiots on television saying, well, that's too far left. Are you kidding? The Democratic Party can't win on that. 70% top tax rate, that's way too far left. That was Dwight Eisenhower, Republican Dwight Eisenhower's tax policy. That was Richard Nixon's tax policy. I mean, give me a break. Russell in Port Townsend, Washington. Hey, Russell, what's up?
Oh, yes. Mr. Hartmann, I've listened to you.
Get your mouth close to the microphone, please, Russell.
Excuse me. How's that?
That's better. What's up?
Okay. Well, just one thing quickly. People call in and say we need to run a centrist candidate. Well, if 80% plus, if I'm not correct, of U.S. citizens would like Medicare for all, and if 70% plus would like the wealthy to pay more taxes, even a marginal tax rate, and over 70% are concerned with the environment, then I would say that Bernie Sanders is arguably the closest centrist candidate we have to run. In fact, anything. Yes.
Elizabeth Warren and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and the other so-called far lefts, progressives. Well, I absolutely agree with you, Russell. I absolutely agree with you.
You know, the other thing I will say, which will probably be controversial, I think it will be difficult. Well, first of all, I'd like to see a Bernie Abrams ticket myself.
Yeah.
That would you know, kind of combine the North and the South. Mm-hmm. And that would also maybe allay fears. Oh, well, Bernie's old. Well, then you'd have a very young, brilliant woman who could, you know, pick up the slack.
The only weakness that Stacey Abrams has in that regard right now, and it's certainly something that could be overcome, although she should toss her hat in the ring, and she's talked about doing it, by the way, in order to get that national profile, is that people don't realize that she was the leader of either the House or the Senate in Georgia for years. I mean, she's not only a brilliant scholar, you know, just an extraordinary woman, but she also has gotten a hell of a lot of stuff done as a politician. She knows how to take names and kick ass. Stacey Abrams does.
Yes, I was so impressed with her rebuttal to the State of the Union, which she wrote herself. And, and it was very, very. I couldn't even stand to listen to Trump. I just had to unmute until she came on. But anyway, that's my point, and I'm trying to make that. I think that's a really. It came to me recently that when people say he's too far to the left, I mean, my goodness. Point out the statistics. 80% concerned.
I know, Russell. It's not. I'm not the one you have to convince. In fact, I'm not the one who's standing in the way of all this. It is these pundits and these people who pretend to be TV news reporters on TV who are offering this opinion constantly, and the occasional Republican consultant who calls in and says, "I've been a Democrat all my life." Russell, spot on. Thank you, David in Cincinnati, Ohio. Hey, David, what's up?
Hey, Tom. How you doing? Can you hear me well?
Just fine.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to. I'm originally from Detroit. I talked to you a few months ago because our birthdays were on the same time. You grew up in Lansing, and I grew up in Detroit. Mm-hmm. But the thing that just drives me nuts is when I hear people say about Trump, he barely won. And when the person who called a couple of callers back said, well, the people didn't show up in Detroit, they did. They did, but 77,000 votes were thrown out, plus.
That's right.
And they're probably still counting.
Yeah.
Trump won the state by less than 11,000 votes. The same thing happened in Milwaukee. The same thing happened in Philadelphia.
Yep.
The interstate cross-checking.
Yep.
And those local folks throwing out the votes.
Yep.
You mentioned earlier in the show that the Republicans already now are throwing out votes.
Yep.
It is the centrist, and I like her. I think she's a wonderful lady, but they've got Claire McCaskill on MSNBC.
I know.
I see why she lost.
Yeah.
And
if we follow her advice, we will lose again.
We'll lose again.
Yeah.
Because she's clueless. And
well, I don't think she's clueless. I think that she's believing a doctrine or an ideology that actually made a certain amount of sense in 1992 and no longer does. Times have changed.
Right.
It's a different time.
Changed.
Yeah. And she hasn't and she has not kept up with that. And it's tragic that she's being offered to us as an oracle, as a sage, as a character of great wisdom. And not just her. I mean, there's a whole bunch of folks who fall into that category. David, I need to move along and get some more callers in here, but thank you.
One last thing.
Okay, go for it.
And the one last thing is this. The election was in November. In January, they were talking about the Democrats need to do this, and this.
Right.
They just won overwhelmingly and took the House. Thank you, Tom.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. And a lot of progressives won a lot of races. David, thank you. Very well said. We'll be back. It is coming up on about 11 minutes before the hour, 48 minutes past the hour. We'll be right back. Stick around.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
It's the place where smart people get their news, the Thom Hartmann Program. We'll be right back. And welcome back. Rhoda in Portland, Michigan. Hey, Rhoda. Thanks for watching Free Speech. What's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. I have 3 points. One is unusual. First of all, I think that Speaker Pelosi is brilliant, and I think she should have everyone's support.
I agree.
Every Democrat support. She knows what she's doing. She's had the experience. She knows this man very well, and she knows how to deal with him.
Totally agree.
And the second thing is, it might offend you, but don't let it. I think we really and truly need to let the bloody Republicans win the presidency and just focus on getting senators in there, because they leave a mess, a financial mess every single time. It's a pattern that must be changed. They elect someone, they spend up all the money, they create all sorts of financial disasters, which he has already done, trillion and whatever head that's there, and then the Democrats come in and clean it all up, and then they take the blame for it also, because they've got to clean this mess up.
Yeah.
And then once the mess is cleaned up and there's some money there left over, well, we had Bush give it away 1 year, $600 extra to everyone, and then we had Obama cleaned up the banks and got people together, even though many people had their houses foreclosed and never saw a penny of their money. The banks and the rich people did. And now we have this one who is ready to get into the Medicare, even to take money from that, ready to take money from the veterans who think that they love him. We have to stop that pattern. Let him win. Let him win, and just try to focus on getting senators in there.
Well, I think we can do both, Rhoda. The fact of the matter is that in the last election for the Senate, because 1/3 of the Senate is up for re-election every 2 years, because they're 6-year terms and they stagger them that way. In the last election, the majority of the people running, and I think it was 17 or 18, something like that, were Democrats. And so, you're always going to have some people lose elections. This time around, although frankly the Democrats did quite well in the Senate, given what they were up against, this time around, if I'm remembering correctly, there are 20 Republicans up for re-election in the Senate, or thereabouts. And a number of those are seats that I think that we can pick off. Now, the wild card, of course, is going to be hundreds of millions of dollars from the Koch network, from Shelley Adelson, from the Mercers, from the billionaire class in the United States. And
the usual.
Yes, as usual. And this is brought to you courtesy of the U.S. Supreme Court's decision in Buckley in '76 and Citizens United in 2010.
And all the Supreme Court justices who, of course, he handpicked for certain reasons.
Yes, amen.
They're all there.
So you know, I think we can do both. But if what you're suggesting is that we need to have a Republican in the White House when the next big economic crash comes, and therefore let that go, I'm thinking that next big economic crash may happen in the next 12 months.
Wow.
We'll see. I may be wrong, but you know, there are so many indicators that are going the wrong direction. On the other hand, you know, the central banks are our central bank, the European central bank, the Chinese central bank, the Japanese central bank. All these central banks are just pouring money in the form of loose credit into the economies to keep them supported, which over the short term, I mean, you know, it's like, how many years can you do this? Japan's been doing it for 23 years. You know, can we do it? We've been doing it for 10 years. Can we do it for 23 years? I don't know. But at some point, when the crash comes, it'll be far worse as a consequence of that.
And that's what worries me. Then they'll have to not lie. They'll have to do something.
Right. And you don't want a Democrat in the White House when the crash happens. I get it. I totally get it, because we saw what happened, you know, back in 1929. There are lessons in history, Rhoda. You're absolutely right. Thank you for the call. We'll be right back. Hey, over at ThomHartmann.com, we've got some really cool stuff. A lot of people don't realize that we produce a daily newsletter, and Sue puts we call it Sue's Daily Stack on there, which is literally a link to every story that I've talked about in the show. So all the research is right there. It's free. We don't share or sell our subscriber list. It's you know, there's just it's there. It's there for you. And it's over at ThomHartmann.com. You can sign up for the free newsletter. You also can get my big picture take of the day, which is exclusively over at our website at ThomHartmann.com, as well as links to our videos, the book reports we typically do every day, all this stuff and more. It's all there at ThomHartmann.com. So check it out and sign up for our newsletter. I think you'll really enjoy it and appreciate it and find a lot of value there. We put a lot of work into this stuff. And you'll find it all right there on our website at ThomHartmann.com. And be sure to check out the newsletter and sign up for it. It's great.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Welcome back, Julie in Vancouver, Canada. Hey, Julie. Thanks for listening to us on Progressive Voices. What's up?
Hi, Tom. Longtime listener. I am on the executive board of Democrats Abroad Vancouver.
Mm-hmm.
I've been involved with them for quite some time, since moving here almost 10 years ago. Prior to that, I was an election judge for the Democrats in Wilmette, Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to say that I can't hear you very well, by the way. Can you hear me?
I hear you just fine, Julie. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I wanted to say here's a call to action for listeners far and wide. The fact is that the paradigm has changed, as you've said so often. We're facing a set of circumstances where the old paradigms don't apply. And I can say, from speaking from being on the inside of Democratic Party leadership abroad, and seeing a lot of the things that the public doesn't see, is that we are facing a pushback on progressive issues from a small subset of established, call them the corporate Democrats or whatever,
sure,
who simply just are operating according to old paradigms that don't apply. But they have a lot of power. And what we need, please, listeners, far and near on Tom's program, is everyone to get mobilized and involved in the Progressive Caucus of the Democratic Party. This isn't a Dem exit situation. That was a bullshit.
We can't use words like that, Julie, on the radio. I'm sorry. We have to dump that. Michael in Bronx, New York. Hey, Michael, your thoughts, real quick.
Hi, Tom. Yeah,
got it in less than a
you
minute.
asked a question. Can you hear me?
Yeah, quick.
Yeah, you asked a question regarding civil war in 2020. I think we're heading towards that way, be it through the elections or even through impeachment and possible removal. And I'm all for the impeachment removal because I see Trump as a criminal, and we have a bunch of GOPs in Congress, at the very least, that are aiding and abetting a criminal. And when it comes to impeachment votes, each one of these senators and even House of Representatives are going to be called out to state their votes orally. And thus, each person will be on record for those that side with the criminal, and that's something that Democrats can run on.
Yeah.
And it will also push for more protections against every single person that's part of this criminal organization.
I'm with you. Michael, thank you for the call, and thanks for listening to us there in the Bronx on WBAI. Spot on. Boy, there's a lot going on. It's an amazing time to be alive. It's a great time to be a Democrat. I am so optimistic about the future of this party and our candidates, and, you know, looking forward to this election. In the meantime, so we'll see you tomorrow. In the meantime, don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. It requires you. Get out there, get active, tag, you're in. We'll see you tomorrow.
Audio and video archives, visit ThomHartmann.com.
From UN headquarters.
We say fight back!